And today I'm so excited to announce our official platinum sponsor, Tarek. Take it away, Zach.
Hi Research Week, I'm Zach, the founder of Tarek. We're incredibly excited to be sponsoring Research Week in a big way this year and are appreciative of learners and the broader research community for welcoming us with open arms. When we started Tarek about a year ago, we spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours talking to researchers in different disciplines, different team sizes, and across the world. Regardless of budgets or what a team looked like, one thing remained consistent throughout all those conversations. People wanted higher quality participants to power the research that you all do. We built Tarek from the ground up with an AI-first approach, introducing things like conversational profiling and AI-led screening that elicit more from participants so we can catch fraud before it reaches you. I'm excited to meet everyone this week, and whether you're in person or virtual, I'd love to connect and learn more about the work that you're doing. Excited for this week, and go learners. See everyone soon.
I'm getting older and I want to do everything I can to stay healthy. I want to be able to go places where I want to go, and I don't want to be stuck in a chair.
You've already touched on privacy and control over your data earlier. Thinking specifically about this onboarding flow, how did you feel while sharing personal health details here?
I think the sharing of personal details, health details, it was very minimal. It didn't make you feel like you were forced to answer or provide extensive details.
All the tickets to Research Week are free. We don't charge anything, which means I have to go ask a lot of wonderful companies for a lot of money, like a lot of money, and they were happy to invest in this community. And I just want, if all of us could take a quick second to give them a round of applause for investing in our community and investing in all of our learning. Thank you so much. And then once they invested all that money with us, I said, that's not enough. I need you to show up in some really special ways to show this community how much you love research. And if you've already walked through, you can see we have flower shops, crazy. We've got some games, we've got tons of coffee and matcha and everything. So please take a few minutes as you're going through here to go say hi to some of the wonderful vendors that we have here today. They're all great people, I vouch for all of them, and there's gonna be a ton of fun stuff happening throughout the week. Quick notes, bathrooms are in the back. That's important information. You're not gonna wanna not have that. And we have today a program focused on market research. It's gonna be led by Lucas Puente. Who here knows Lucas Puente? Yeah. Amazing. Lucas is a wonderful research leader. He's from Slack, and he's curated an incredible program. Before we get to that, I want to take a moment to welcome on stage our platinum sponsor, Tarek. Zach from Tarek, can you come on up and come say hi?
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Alec, for the introduction and for welcoming us and all of you here. I know Alec gave a really big thank you to myself and all the other wonderful sponsors here today. But truly, none of this could be done without Alec and all of the Learners team. So I would love to actually give a quick round of applause for all of them, for all the hard work that they've done. I think we were keeping them here last night, setting up all the water bottles until the wee hours of the evening, and so we really thank them for that. For all of those who don't know me, I'm Zach. I'm one of the co-founders at Tarek. Now, a lot of you may not have heard of us as we're a fairly new company, but we are a B2B and B2C panel company really focused on providing researchers with high quality respondents. When we started the company, we were super fascinated with what types of tools people were using, if there was room to build tools or softwares to help all of you out. We quickly realized that the missing piece was actually good respondents to power all of the research, tools, and work that you guys do today. So you'll be hearing a lot from us this week, and we've, as Alex said, paid a lot of money to make sure you literally can't miss us as you go through the event. We've got some booths set up. We have some water available for all of you guys. But I really just want to take this time to say thank you to Alec and the research community for welcoming us with open arms. When we met Alec, I think in the fall of last year, he was just one of the most genuine people that I met, and I knew that he was putting something really special together with learners, with Research Week, which is why it was so important to us to make this investment in the community to help out Alec, to help out all of the researchers that are here. And we're super excited to hear from all of the amazing speakers this week. And I'm really excited to meet all of you as well. So please come find myself or any other members of the team, and we're excited to chat with all of you. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Zach. As you can tell, everything blue is Tarek. You can't miss him. We have one of the things that's really important to do at Research Week is make new friends. Because when we make stronger connections as a community, we become a much more resilient and stronger community ourselves. And one of the things that we've been working on, which if you haven't had a moment to check out, is a little web app that's super easy to use that allows you to connect with other people and keep those contact informations for after the conference. So if you go to joinlearners.com/together, you can scan my QR code and take all of my emails. And then I will have more contacts than Judd. And I'm in a competition with him, so please scan my QR code and take my contact information. One other thing, I know it's not always easy to meet people, so sometimes we need to break the ice. And today, back literally by popular demand, is someone who runs what I've heard as the best icebreakers anyone has ever experienced. His name is Eric Olesen. He's a UX researcher at Anthropic, and he killed it in New York. So much so that we had to bring him back to Research Week so he could lead us in some icebreakers to kick off some of these connections. So without further ado, come on up, Eric.
Thank you, Alec. And apparently I run the best icebreakers in the world. That's a tall task to now live up to. The only way I can succeed is by having you all play along. So will you please help me make a new friend in the next 5 minutes? Please? Yes, all right. Thank you so much. Alex mentioned this, but so much about coming to a festival like this is, of course, about learning from other people. Some of those people will be on stage. Most of those people are sitting right next to you. So I want to make sure that everyone in the audience today gets an opportunity to make one meaningful connection, and I'm going to help you make that connection a little bit faster than if I wasn't here. So here's what we're going to do. Please stand up. And then I want you to find someone you don't yet know and introduce yourself. And when you hear the music playing, stop talking, okay? Because otherwise you're going to be talking all day long and the program won't continue. Okay, so find someone you don't know, introduce yourself, but as soon as the music starts playing, stop talking. Go. I found someone that I happen to know, but he's going to help me demonstrate this activity. Okay, great. You have a partner. If you don't, then just join a trio, because this works in groups of 2 or 3. What you are going to do with your partner, by the way, keep standing because you're going to need to work together on this. What I want you to do is to think of a life motto, something worth living by, words of wisdom that can guide you through today, through the week, and through your life. But the way you'll create this is one word at a time. You'll do it together. You'll kind of know when it's done. And once you get to the end, you're going to say it together in one voice. It will look something like this. Always.
Remember.
To.
Go.
To.
Research.
Week.
Yeah!
Right, in one voice.
No.
Always. Together. We're going to say it together in one voice. Always remember to go to Research Week. There you go. Everybody, Alec Levin. Okay, your turn. Turn to your partner. One word at a time. You'll kind of know when you get to the end, and if we have time, I might hear a few from the audience. Go.
Somehow, but your agent will help you with that.
I would try to go 3 distinct times.
All right, you may all please have a seat. Thank your partner. Please have a seat. Thank you so much. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank your partner. If you're still in the back, now's the moment to rush up and grab a seat because the actual program is just about to start. But as people are refinding their footing, refinding their seats, is there one pair who invented such a good motto that the rest of the conference needs to hear it? Raise your hand. We need one pair to share the life motto that we all need to hear. Where is it? I know it's out there. There's one life motto that was just invented that we all need. Yes? Okay, in one voice. Ready?
Be curious about everything always.
Be curious about everything always. Thank you so much. All right, on that topic, I'm very excited to introduce a person who was very early influence on my career as a researcher. He was the market researcher at Thumbtack when I started my career there, and I always thought maybe one day I will be as smart as him. I have long ago given up on that ambition because I will never catch up with this man, but very excited to host, if he's ready to come up, the host of our first half-day program, Lucas Puente.
All right, thank you, Eric. Good morning, everybody. Excited to see you all on a Monday morning. Thanks for being the first ones here. First session of the first day. What's going to be an amazing week here in San Francisco. This is going to be just an awesome set of sessions, and I'm excited to kick this off talking about advanced market research. And so you might say to yourself, like, what does that actually mean? What does advanced market research actually look like? Well, let me start with a question. I'm a researcher. You're all probably researchers, which is why you're here. And so what do researchers do? We ask questions. So let me start with a question for you guys. Who got into research to better understand the world? Raise your hand. If you aren't raising your hand, I'm very curious why you became a researcher. I became a researcher because I was really curious about the world. And it's like, there's lots of interesting things happening around me. I want to understand them. I'm just a naturally curious person. I'm sure you guys are naturally curious people as well, which is why a lot of us became researchers. And so eventually we realized, okay, if we're going to understand the world around me, there's this job called UX research or design research or market research or data science or economics. And that's, there's multiple different lenses to kind of look at the world around you. And you can look at the world through quantitative angles, qualitative angles, survey angles, and so on and so forth. But what I want to talk to you guys a little bit right now, and I'm going to turn it over to our amazing set of speakers to talk even more about, is how to do that really effectively. And there's two main tenets that I want to kind of introduce you to that'll be woven throughout this session. One, if you really want to understand the world around you, you have to be multidisciplinary. You have to think about how to collect multiple different types of data. So a lot of us are coming to this event with a qualitative event, which is amazing. There's so much rich color you can get from talking to users, having in-depth interviews, doing diary studies, and the whole slew of qualitative methods that are out there. But that's just one set of methods. If you can then look at how your users are interacting with your product through your data warehouse and behavioral analytics, that unlocks another set of insights. Then you can go survey the world, talk to prospective users, talk to current users, collect lots of survey data. That's a third set of data you can get access to. So like one of my main thesis about how to better understand the world is like collect as much data as you can from all these different angles. So talk to people, survey people, look at how they're using your product, look at how they're using other products, look at what's going on in the competitive market. So the more data you can get, the richer your insights will be. And I think that's a really good way to come to stakeholders, especially executives, like we have these big insights and we feel really confident about the strength of the insights because of it's not just from one data source or two data sources, it's from multiple data sources. And so you can do that now with Cloud Code or other AI tools in a way that wasn't really possible only a couple of months ago. So because of AI, the ability to write SQL code, if you don't know how to write SQL, like that is a new skill that is basically instantly available to anybody in this audience, anybody in this room. You can reach users kind of easier than ever with a lot of vendors that are out there in this room today. So it's like easier than ever to collect multiple different types of data, which is why I'm really excited about this session and some of the insights we'll talk about over the next couple of hours. The second tenet I want to talk about just quickly, and then it'll come through in a lot of the sessions, is reaching out to your stakeholders in a way that is truly empathetic to who they are. So if you're thinking about, I want to reach the executive audience and make sure our company's leadership really understands what I'm talking about, don't present to them like you might present to other researchers. When you're presenting to other researchers, go through all the methodology. Talk about who you talk to, your survey design. You could talk about your research plan. All of those details are great when you're talking to other researchers. When you're talking to your CEO, you don't want to bore them with those details. You want to connect to them in a way that truly understands who they are and kind of what they're optimizing for. They're short on time, they're very busy, they're just trying to figure out what do I need to know and are you confident this is the right insight? And that's true for any other type of function that's out there that you're working with. So if you're talking to a marketer, think about what are their North Stars in marketing. If you're thinking about a product designer, what are their North Stars on product design? Same thing for engineering, same thing for product management, and so on and so forth. So with researchers, we're often taught to be empathetic towards our users, and that is, of course, a very important skill set of being a really good researcher, but it's also really important to be empathetic towards your stakeholders. And so that's kind of the second main tenet I want to emphasize as we kind of get going with this day is, if we want to bring insights together, collect as much data as you can, partner with your different functions, use some of these AI tools that make these different data sets more accessible than ever before, but then communicate them in a way that's really empathetic to your stakeholders. Do it in a way that they can really connect with, they can wrap their head around, and it's easy for them to fully internalize. And if you do that, you'll be a better market researcher, you'll be a better user researcher, you'll be a better data scientist, and so on and so forth. So that is my little quick introduction to the day. And I think we're going to have a great set of speakers. And with that, I will turn it to our first one, Dr. Andrew Chamberlain. Dr. Andrew Chamberlain is coming to us from Chime, where he leads product data science. And he has an incredible resume that I will not kind of steal his thunder, but I will turn it to him. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. My name is Andrew Chamberlain, and I've known Lucas for years, back when I was a chief economist at Glassdoor, and I've been working as an economist for more than a decade. But what my real job has been getting access to platform data from a variety of tech platforms and like busting them open and turning them into stories about the real world. So this is like taking data from your platform, doing research, and using it to build the brand, to get the company like seen more as an institution and less as just another tech platform out there. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of walk you through that playbook and give you some tips about how to build this yourself and try to convince you that it's in your interest as a researcher to try to do more public-facing research, and it's also good for your company as well. So, so this is the talk, and before I get started, I want to make clear what the prize is that you're aiming for here. Okay? So this is like, imagine what your marketing team would be willing to spend to get a dedicated interview with you from your company on NPR for All Things Considered, or to have you on CNBC, going through your, walking through yourself and your research as the expert in this topic. Like, this stuff is incredibly valuable, and this is what's at stake, and it's like can't really be bought at any price. What I want to emphasize to you is that this is something that is accessible if you just sort of think bigger and think about what stories can I tell about the broader zeitgeist, like what topics do something from my data, from my platform, have something to say about, even if it's not perfect. I want to convince you that it's worth doing, and it's actually not that hard to get started. So to get you in the right mindset for how to think about how to do this, okay? I want you to imagine laying out index cards on a table in front of you, okay? And think about your brand. So whatever your company is, Redfin, Anthropic, Glassdoor. For each index card on your table, what I want you to think of is like, what is one story out in the public, in your industry, that you want to own? Where you want to be the go-to expert as the brand, where when NPR or the Wall Street Journal comes to do a story about that topic, they come to you. And so you're going to have like cards out on the table for all the public conversations that you want to own as your brand, okay? What those cards are, that's your research agenda. Like you want to study from using some data from your platform on every one of those index cards, okay? So if you're Redfin, where are the most affordable homes for Gen Z? You see that type of research coming out for them. And then, I was the chief economist at Glassdoor for almost 8 years. We really wanted to be known for pay transparency. So we did studies on like the gender pay gap. We just wanted to own that issue and be the expert that got the phone call from reporters, rather than them going to an academic or going to some think tank. They come to us because we've got something special to say. And Anthropic, like you see them going wild with their research today. They're in intense competition with OpenAI and others, so they want to be the ones who are the expert in how AI is being adopted, okay? Now, before I go on, if you want to figure out how to build this at your company, you have to convince your executive team that this is worth doing. It's not just like a great idea, right? It has to be good for the business. So I just want to walk you through some quick reasons why your companies should care about this, okay? So the first one is that doing this kind of research can make your brand look so much bigger than you really are. I think when I first started doing this at Glassdoor, we were like 300 people. But when you show up in a front page story in the Wall Street Journal, like you look like you're JP Morgan Chase, you look like a huge institution. So this gives air cover to your sales teams. Like you'll see faster enterprise sales cycles if the customers have like already heard about your brand and they believe that you're credible because they like heard you on Marketplace. Investors also pay attention, right? If like you're on Bloomberg, like you're reaching a huge investor audience, and you really want to be seen as an institution. The second reason your company should care is that SEO is no longer the only reason to want inbound links and to have research out there. Like back in the old days, it was all an SEO play. But today, you got to feed the LLMs. Like, if you don't have credible research, you're not going to show up when people are searching for those index card topics in ChatGPT, and you'll basically just be left behind. So this is another reason why you've got to have like meaty content. Okay. Third is something that I learned over the years at Glassdoor, which kind of surprised me. Like, I wouldn't have expected this. So when you run an external-facing research group, okay, it's basically like one ongoing hack project that never ends. Like, every project is just like, let's see if we can build some crazy thing so that we can get a study done on this topic. But every so often, when you do that, you end up prototyping something that can actually be a sellable product, which is amazing. So we had this example at Glassdoor when we did a research project with an academic from the Sloan School at MIT. He called it the Culture 500. And it was like using data from Glassdoor to try to classify the company culture for the 500 biggest companies in the world along various dimensions. And we just thought it was like an awesome research project, but our like product team saw it and they were like, we can absolutely sell this as an enterprise, like B2B sales product. And so the product team roadmapped it and actually built a sellable product that generated like millions in revenue for the company. It all started from a research project. So you can take over the product roadmap. Next, depending on what situation you're in, like you might want to show investors that you're a big deal. You want investors to think you're sitting on data that is a competitive moat. So at Gusto, I did a project where we took the payroll data from Gusto and turned it into a small business jobs report. So it was like the first week of every month, I was going out to the world saying, in the United States today, like small businesses created whatever, 42,000 jobs, and like put out a regular release. And it got us into the Bloomberg terminal as a data source. So think of the eyes of all those investor audiences who got to see that. And then depending on what sector you're in, you might care about public policy. And just the fact is like, if you have a lobbying team or a public policy team in DC, doing any kind of external research where you've got something to say about your field, it can be the way you get in the conversation about regulation and public policy stuff. So one example of this is I got to testify before the US Congress about pay equity and pay equity rules. And the only reason that I was called to testify is because we had several studies that we did at Glassdoor that like laid out the facts on gender pay equity, and we just like filled the space with our own research, and so when it came time to call experts, like we were on the list, and that wouldn't have happened if we weren't doing this. Okay, so much for the company. What you guys really care about is like, what's in it for me, right? Okay, so I'm with you. Why your career should care about doing this, okay? One thing, like, Lucas would probably tell you, who's done this before, is like, as soon as you start doing this public research, different doors open to you. Like, you start getting invited to different kinds of conferences, like, you get treated like on a different level. And it's really kind of unfair in a way because, like, you're still, there's so many amazing researchers out there. Just because you happen to be the one who, like, goes out and, like, does a radio interview, you get totally different things available to you. But it's true. And the awesome thing is that it's all portable. Like, yeah, sure, if you go on stage, like, and do an interview for your company gets most of the brand benefit, but all that credibility that you build, you get to keep it yourself for the next place that you go. So I've found that to be really valuable. So whether or not you have your first PhD or not, doing external research can kind of force you to almost do a second PhD. Like, at least that was my experience, because every project is like another hack. You got a chance to, if you have a roadmap of like 25 studies you want to do over the next few years, like you can think, now's my chance to use some new ML method. Now's my chance to do some crazy prediction. Like, I saw this cool thing at a conference, like now's my chance to just try it and see if I can make it work. So I've learned like tremendous amount of technical stuff just from forcing myself to get into the weeds with each new study we did. And this is all stuff that benefits you directly. Wait until the first time you do a marketplace interview and your CEO like sends it around to the company and like, check this out. Like you get like invited into different conversations in the company. So being an external influencer is one way that you also become an internal influencer. It's a way to get leverage for yourself with executives. And frankly, just the practice of getting up and doing like soundbite interviews with media, it's like really good for you if you ever have to sit in front of a board of directors and do storytelling. It's exactly the same skill. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you this is worth doing. It's good for a company and good for you. And now I just want to get into the details of how to build it, okay? How do you get an external facing research group up and running? Now, the most important thing by far, it's not to be underestimated, is that you cannot possibly build this without an executive sponsor. You need somebody at like the VP level or above who is willing to go to battle for you, because there's going to be a lot of people at the company who will not want you to do this. Okay, I'm making it sound like this is all benefit and no risk, but that's not the case, because to do this sort of research, you're going to have to be provocative, right? You're going to be out there taking stands that some more risk-averse people in your company are not going to be comfortable with. You're also going to be working with PII data sometimes, and people are going to be nervous about that. So the best way to win this over is like pull aside your best friend in the C-suite and show them by example. You basically need to make them feel left out. That there are other companies doing this, Zillow, Indeed, LinkedIn, whoever. You just need to show them that there is a playbook and just like have them look at what it is. It's so hard to convince people of the opportunity by just telling them. You have to just show them what great looks like here. Second is, I just want to talk about the team, okay? So a common misunderstanding is like a great way to start a group like this is just like find an academic at Harvard and they'll like start writing papers for you. But like, that's not a great idea. So instead, you want to build the in-house capability instead, okay? So you have like 3 options here. The first option most people start with is like, you go find some unicorn who can code and do great research, but then also can go talk to people. Like those people are very hard to find. The more sustainable thing is like a 3-person team, right? It's like someone who wants to get up and give talks, so it can be like a public-facing person, someone who just wants to do data work, who can do like a lot of the behind the scenes, like crushing the numbers and like getting the papers done. And then you need a PR person to just be like, you know, lining you up with interviews and stuff. With that, you can get most of the benefits of this with just that. And it's not that expensive. I mean, if you think about totaling up the salary for all those people, like compared to what you'd be willing to pay to get yourself on, you know, All Things Considered or on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, like it's a budget deal. The only teams that have like the 5+ are like places that have been grinding away at this for years, like Zillow, where, you know, they've got a big team because they've been doing it for a decade or more. Okay, now I want to talk about like what the team should do. I kind of think of, there's like 5 pillars of what you want to spend your time on. Think of this work as like a portfolio of work, okay? So 5 big things you want to spend your time on. The first thing is your research should be like a portfolio of different stuff. It shouldn't be all big papers and it shouldn't be all blog posts and social. It has to be like a mixture. So you want like a newsletter, you want 3 or 4 or 5 big papers a year, blog posts, video, social podcasts. You know, as my favorite supervillain Steve Bannon would say, you want to like flood the space and like cover all the channels. Second is to really do this in the big leagues, you got to have a data product. So you've got to have something every month you come out with. It's like the AI index or the jobs index. You just got to come up with something from your data that can be like a regular cadence thing. If you don't have that, you're always seen as like a one-off. Third is don't be shy with media. This is one common mistake I see, is that people aim for like trade publications or like 3rd-tier media to get started. No, you should go straight to the top. Like you should go straight to the New York Times because you'd be surprised what you can get. And for academics, okay, I love my academics out there. Maybe there's some former academics here. But I don't think they're the first place you should start with. You should wait until you have your internal team going. Academics can be kind of slow and have like very technical research ideas that aren't very sexy for the media, frankly. So I think they're an awesome partner later. not at the beginning. And then finally, number 5 is don't pretend that you can do this all from behind your laptop. You have to be out meeting people. You have to get on a plane and like go to New York and meet media members. Like you got to do a tour in DC and meet policy people. You got to get out there and shake hands, because if you don't, you're just another voice on the internet and nobody gives a crap. So in the ideal state of the team, I kind of think of it like this. Like top row is like, this is like your first priority. You've got to have like a landing page where you look like a real group with your nice bios and your headshots. You got to have like a monthly data product, and then you got to have like some papers, 3 or 4 papers you do a year. The second tier is like the second row, which is like you build up to that, right? You get a monthly newsletter, you got TV and radio interviews, and so on. And then eventually, you get to a mature group and you can start holding like events. You can invite, policy people or whatever, or experts to come and do roundtables with you and stuff. You can start doing academic data sharing. Like you can convince your legal team to let you share proprietary data with outside researchers, or start doing like fancy things like a podcast. But this is if you have all of these things in place, like you're the best in the world. So this is like a known thing. This is like what you need to make this be super effective. Okay, now I want to warn you of all the ways you can fail at this. So this is the most important part of the talk probably, because I've made all these mistakes myself. This is all the ways you're going to stumble and fall on your face when you try and do this, okay? So first one is aiming too low, aiming for the trade publication. Like, don't waste your time. Go straight to the Wall Street Journal. Second is everybody knows your data at your platform is not representative of the overall market. Like, get over it. Like, everybody knows that. No marketplace, no company has a business that's big enough, even Amazon, to say like what's going on everywhere in the real world. So just get ready to apply sample weights or adjustments to make it look representative. Third is sitting behind your laptop and pretending like that's enough. No, you have to get out and actually shake people's hands and go meet people and let them, recognize that you're an expert. You're a real person. You're not just like some kid with an AI tool writing papers behind their laptop. You got to be an expert. And then fourth is still trying to do everything by hand. Don't do it. Like, Claude Code has absolutely transformed the way I work as a researcher in the last year. It's like 4 times more productive for certain tasks than I used to. So don't even bother hiring people who are just like the SQL gurus. Like, you have to know some of that, but you should be like leaning in really heavily on AI tools for this stuff. Fourth one is not having a landing page. This is surprisingly common, which I can't believe. So if you say, oh, I'm a researcher and I have this new study for my brand, and we're going to release it to the world, like the first thing I'm going to do as an editor or a reporter is like, I'm going to go Google stalk you and look for your page to see if you're a real group. And if you don't even have like a landing page at your company and a bio, like forget it. Like you're not going to be taken seriously. So it seems like such a small thing to have a website like at Zillow.com/research or whatever. It seems so small, but it's actually a very powerful signal. Another one, the second one here, is no narrative tension. So I've seen this at like very risk-averse companies where they want the researcher to just come out and be like, it's good news. Like, our brand is good and our people are happy and it's wonderful. But that's not a story. Like, narrative tension is instead, it's like conventional wisdom is X, but in fact that's bullshit and Y is true. And here's our data to show it. Like, that's how you get people's attention. So you have to take provocative stances if you want people to pay attention to you. Third is don't do too many listicles. Try to do real research. And then the last one I'll share with you, the last pitfall, is death by internal slide deck for executives. So often when you start doing external research, the C-suite will like think, oh, they know what's going on in the market. And this team should like once a week prepare this awesome memo for me that gives me the full intel on what's going on in the market, and it's going to help us like change the way we run the business. If you spend your time on that, then you're going to do no external research. Like, you'll just spend all your time doing slide decks for the execs. So focus on what matters, which is out there in the world, not the boardroom. Okay, now that we're kind of at the end of my pitch, I'm just going to show you places I think are just awesome at this, okay? If you want to know who's doing it right, go look at Zillow. They've been like the pioneers here and have been doing this for 15 years. The Indeed hiring lab is amazing. They used to be my biggest competitor, so it kind of I die a little bit inside saying that they're amazing, but they are amazing. And then Gusto, which is a place where I was a chief economist for a while. They're small and scrappy, and they do like really nice. They take platform data from payrolls for 500,000 small businesses and turn it into all kinds of crazy stories, and it's just really cool. So, just so if you need examples, like there is a playbook out there. This is not something you have to completely invent. You can look to these places, and they'll get you what you need. So the last thing I wanted to share with you is we used to do this training, this media training back in the day, and the training was called "What's Your Bacon?" And what it was there would be a person there simulating like they're a reporter or like a television anchor, and you're being interviewed, and they're going to talk to you about the markets or whatever, the housing market or or finance or whatever your field is, and they're going to ask you questions and about your research, and your whole goal is to turn the conversation to bacon, like in any way that you can. So you got to figure out how to whatever they're asking you, you got to pivot and be start talking about the pork market or something, or use a metaphor that you got to get the conversation back to bacon, okay? And the reason I'm telling you this is that this is what it takes to be successful for external research. Like when you do media interviews about your work, you're not there to be helpful and answer questions. You're there to get the conversation to bacon. Like you have your point of view and your message that you want to give, and it comes from your research, and your goal is no matter what you're asked, go back to bacon. So my question for you is what's your guys' bacon for all of your brands? Think about your company, right? So if you can think about this framing, the public thinks X is true, but in fact, research from our platform, from our brand, shows that in fact Y is true. If you can do that right now, if you can fill in that blank for your brand, you're ready to do this right now, and that's really all it takes. So I hope that I've inspired you guys to go do something awesome. I'll look forward to seeing research from all of you guys in the future, and thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions you have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. That was super interesting. I've long admired your work, starting at Glassdoor and at Gusto, and you've done some really great product research and data science at Chime and Udemy before this. Let's start with the kind of last insight you started with, or you ended with, around what's your bacon. As a user of lots of software tools, what is one company you haven't seen do this that you imagine there's some bacon there that you would wish they would kind of share that with the world? I'm sure you're thinking about all sorts of companies that you're a customer of or you're a user of that you're man, I wish company X would share this, and maybe they are, but not doing it in a way you've seen.
I think especially companies in banking and finance have incredible information about people's lives, and they're, for a variety of reasons, have been very risk averse, for regulatory reasons, legal reasons. But I think those companies, really could come out and take a stronger stance because they see so much. And if they could just, especially some of the smaller players who are really trying to disrupt the big institutions, I think that that's what I would love to see. But I'd be curious to what you think. What's the bacon for any place you've been? Where do you think that there's missed opportunities? What company out there should be doing this?
Well, I'll give a shout out to Eric at Anthropic. I think I am a big user of Cloud Code. I know you just referenced it too, and you guys are starting to share some with the world about how people are using AI. But I think it's so interesting to see how people are using AI, not just from the volume count, but the use cases, and I can learn a lot as a user. Okay, I didn't know people were using Claude to do X or ChatGPT to do Y, and I think seeing more of those use cases and the creative ideas for how to use these frontier tools is something I personally find a lot of value in as a consumer of information, and then I go into my workday and share that with my team, share that with kind of my own Koge, and go, hey Claude, I saw this article about how people are doing X with you. can you help me do that? And then kind of I'll go off to the races.
Great.
Yeah. Any questions for Andrew from the audience? I have lots of questions, but I know we have to get the next speaker. Yeah. I'll come to you.
Mike.
Hi, thanks for your talk. How much brand, is this too loud? How much brand recognition do you need to have credibility for a PR person to come talk to you? Like Zillow, Glassdoor, kind of all seem like household names. Maybe it's like a chicken and egg problem, but it's kind of seemed like Gusto is maybe the one that is only one that's a little less known.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't think you need any pre-existing brand recognition at all to do this. I think that if you have a provocative piece of research and you have a story that explains that the data aren't perfect but are something useful and different and only available from you, anyone can do this. Like Glassdoor, when they first started doing this kind of stuff, they never did any paid advertising at all. 100% of their brand advertising was this. It was like earned media through PR. So I've seen companies like Ramp and Deal come out of nowhere and are like getting top tier media coverage for their work. So I think that's what's like so powerful about this is it costs almost nothing out of pocket and you can immediately go straight to the top channels in media.
And what I love about these companies is that they're thinking about their stakeholders as not just people who work for the company, but people who are just in the world. And so like Ramp, for example, like seeing how they're putting their data out there about what are companies spending their money on and like what are the top rising software companies out there. Like I work at Slack, SaaS company, we pay very close attention to the SaaS world, and like seeing Ramp's chief economist talk about SaaS product spend and how that's trending in the different risers is a really interesting data point for me as an external stakeholder. So I love this type of work. I think there's so much value both for the companies, but also for people like us who just want to understand the world. So if you aren't doing it yourself, think about doing it. Andrew had some great points to take away to your companies, and pay attention to what's out there too. Like I guarantee you will all learn from some of the companies that Andrew talked about, and just generally paying attention to the data that these types of teams are releasing into the world. So thank you, Andrew. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Well, Andrew was our first talk of the day, first talk of the week, and he set a high bar. It was an amazing talk to think about how we can share insights with the world and do that in a really thought-provoking way to help yourself build a brand, help your company build a brand, and help the people kind of out in the world better understand what is happening in all these different ways. We're going to turn it now to our second talk. So Anna Clutho is a research leader at LinkedIn, who is one of the companies doing really pioneering work about how to understand the world through their own data. So, as you might imagine, LinkedIn has an incredible data set on what's going on with jobs and job seekers, and I'm a huge admirer of their work, and it's helped me better understand the world of work and what's going on in the labor market. So she's going to talk about all of the work that they're doing and how they're releasing different data sets out into the world. So Anna, excited to have you come talk to us about what is going on at LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Wow. My name is Anna Clutho, and I am a Senior Market Research Manager at LinkedIn. And today, I am excited to talk to you about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and something that I believe will be the next frontier for our role, and honestly, something that will probably future-proof us in today's AI-driven world. And as the title suggests, I'm going to be talking about data sources, but more specifically, why one data source is not enough, and the magic that can happen when you bring it all together. But first, I want you to imagine that you are hosting a dinner party. You have some very important guests that you are looking to impress. You have planned the meal. They arrive to your house. You sit them down for dinner, and you serve them one dish. And it's an amazing dish. It is a dish that you know how to make inside and out. You have the flavors down. You know the technique. You've got the timing. But one dish does not a dinner party make. And your guests are polite. They're going to sit. They're going to eat. But they're going to leave hungry. But the worst part is they're not going to tell you that they're still hungry. They're just not going to come back. And that's a problem. But imagine instead that you designed a 4-course meal instead. Each course on its own is amazing, but together it creates a symphony of flavors, a sequencing so perfect, an experience so satisfying that your guests are still talking about it the next day. This is what great research programs do, but a lot of us are still only delivering one dish. But a lot of us talk about mixed methods, right? There's a qual and a quant. There's an interview plus a survey, and that's good, but let's challenge that thinking today. That most research programs, even the greatest ones, are still pulling from a very narrow pool of data sources. We're thinking, what's in our qualitative toolkit? What's in our quant toolkit? But that's not giving us the full picture, and we deserve to deliver that to our stakeholders. They want that full picture, and that's not a methods problem, that's a sources problem. So let's get into that. My argument today is that mixed methods on their own is not enough, that the next frontier is mixed sources. When we combine attitudinal research with things like behavioral data, support feedback, macro signals, we don't just get more data, we get a better quality of insight, one that is harder to ignore, easier to act on, and far more likely to enact change. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, what type of sources are available, how you can combine them, and the magic that happens when you do. But let's take a step back and take a look at why we might not be doing that today. I'm sure many of us have done research where we're asking respondents or participants, why don't you do a certain behavior? And there's some common responses that we often hear. First, I don't know what's out there. And it's true, when you join your organization, nobody hands you a map of the different data sources inside or outside your organization. But we're researchers, we are innately curious, so how can we use this curiosity to explore what's possible, what might be available for us, even if we still wish that we had that map? Second, that's somebody else's job. But let's say it, ownership of the data does not mean ownership of the insight. We as researchers, we know humans, we know human behavior, and so we are more than qualified to be able to interpret just about any data source. Third, I don't have the tools or the access. That might have been a barrier a little while ago, but with all of the advancement in AI, it's making it easier than ever to get access to lots of different data sources without the true data skills underneath it. And then finally, I wouldn't know how to analyze it. But we're not asking you to be a data analyst. It's instead being able to understand a trend, identify a pattern, just know what a number is telling you. And if you still need help, there's lots of organizations that can help you, or departments within your organization that can help. If you bring the query, or the question, they can come with the query. So we've debunked all of these different barriers. Let's talk about those different sources. So I'm going to talk about the 4 great courses of a great research meal, and then the one pairing that brings it all together. So let's talk first about the appetizer course, which is behavioral data, right? The appetizer sets the stage for the meal, and so does the behavioral data provide the foundation for our research story. And this is what individuals are doing in your product, right? It's what the clicks that they're doing, the sessions, the products, the features that they're using. And this is the most honest data source that we have available because it's not relying on people telling us what they're doing, what they're thinking, but instead it's what they're actually doing in the product. And this can be found throughout your company's data warehouse, and there's lots of different teams that can help you get access to this with whatever sort of analytic tools that you have available. But what I love about behavioral data is the fact that it sits at the individual level. Being able to pair it in with different type of research sources at that respondent level gives you so much richer understanding of the what and the why, and being able to better diagnose what's going on in a certain situation. I especially love when they disagree with each other. When a survey says that they love your feature, but the behavioral data says that they've never even used it. That's really interesting. Next, we have our soup course. Soup is really weighty, it's warming, it's satisfying. And so telemetry does the same thing. It provides a weight to your insight story. It's those KPIs or business metrics that talk about the health of your organization, the vital signs of your product. And it's often a North Star for somebody in your organization. And so because of that, because lots of people care about it, it can be found lots of different places. Whether it's in reviews, scorecards, or dashboards, looking at things like adoption rates, engagement rates, conversion, churn, etc. And again, lots of people care, so lots of people can help. But what I love here, again, is the idea that provides weight. This is what your business cares about. This is the language that they're using when they talk about success. And so if you're able to connect your research towards what other parts of your business cares about, you're speaking their language and giving them something that they just can't ignore. Third, we've got our dessert course, or support feedback. Dessert can be sweet, but it also can be sour. And it can be that thing that we often think about later on after the meal is over. And what I love about support feedback is it's the unfiltered voice of the most frustrated users. They're coming to us unsolicited to tell us what's wrong in their experience. They're telling us in tickets or chats or overall calls. And it's telling us more specifically where in the experience it's being broken down. Is it a particular friction point? Is it a part of the experience itself? It can be found in a customer service platform, CX, voice of customers. I work with our product operations team to get this type of feedback. But it's additional qualitative evidence to weave into your narrative, bringing it closer into the product itself. Fourth, we have social listening, or as I like to call it, the cheese course. Cheese course can be unexpected, right? It's a little bit surprising. And to lean into that cheese pun, it can have the sharpest insights as well. Because it's what users say when they think that we're not listening. They're answering questions that we didn't even think to ask in our research, and they're doing it in a public sphere. It can be found in those reviews in app stores, places like Reddit, X, LinkedIn. And there's lots of different fancy social listening tools that you can get to access this type of data. But because it's publicly available, we can get scrappy. It can be a simple search in any of these different platforms, searching on your brand, on your topic, whatever you care about. And then finally, the wine pairing, which is macro signals, which is honestly my favorite type of data source to weave in, partly because it brings us out beyond our organization, beyond our product. It's talking about what's happening outside, right? It's labor market trends, economic indicators, industry trends, competitive intelligence, but it grounds our insights in reality. If we're just focused within our particular product, within our particular business, we might be missing the other factors outside of our organization that's influencing behaviors and trends. And this data is also publicly available. In the case of labor market trends, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has both raw data that you can play with to your heart's delight, or there's lots of places that synthesizes this into more polished perspectives in places like the Wall Street Journal. But there's other sources that can sit behind paywalls, and so teams like competitive intelligence or strategy teams can really help you get what's behind that bar there. So we talked about 4 different courses. We talked about the one pairing. Each one of these provides different perspectives and different dimensions to a single question, but the magic is bringing them all together. We've been talking a lot in theoreticals. I'd love to bring this more specific to an example from the work that I do at LinkedIn, specifically focused on job seekers. So I run a tracking study focused on job seeker sentiment, wanting to understand what's driving job seeker sentiment on the platform. It's a fairly simple concept in and of itself, but requires a more complex answer. And so looking at the 4 different courses that which I'll build the meal around this question. I'll anchor first on the survey data. This has my hero metrics. It has my drivers framework. It tells me whether sentiment is going up or down, and it gives me an understanding of what might be influencing that trend. But I know there's lots of stories about the job market today, that there's going to be questions about how much the macro is influencing sentiment. I want to get ahead of that, and so I'm pulling in macro signals. And as much as there's those public sources that I talked about earlier, LinkedIn has a lot of proprietary data that I can easily bring into my story, whether it's hiring rates from our economic graph team, application trends that we see on platform, or general consumer sentiment towards the ability to find and get a job through the Workforce Confidence Index. And being able to bring these in and analytically understand how much is this influencing sentiment, I can say that macro does have some influence, but it's still our own experience that drives job seeker sentiment towards the platform. So with that in mind, I'm looking at my support feedback, working with my product operations team to understand where in the product is it breaking down, where are there escalation patterns or key themes that are coming up, and how does that align to what I'm seeing in my drivers in my survey. And then finally, to make it an answer that my stakeholders cannot ignore, is bringing in behavioral data to really quantify the cost of inaction. By being able to append at the individual level, what does engagement look like, activity on the platform, I can say that those job seekers with the lowest sentiment have lowest engagement and higher use of competitors. And so if we don't reverse this trend, we're going to be seeing some adverse reactions to our North Star metrics. So 4 different courses, 4 different sources, weaving in a narrative. When I had just one different source, it was interesting. It gave me a perspective, but there was a lot of open questions about what was behind it. But when I brought the 4 sources together, it gave a more comprehensive answer of what's going on, the issue at hand, where the problem sits, and the cost of inaction. And that's really the magic of bringing all the sources together. So reframing this and bringing this all together, I do love a metaphor, so please bear with me. There's more than it's more than just being a researcher, it's being an insights culinarian. And so a culinarian is someone who does more than just cook, right? They know flavors, they know technique, but they know how to make a meal memorable. And an insights culinarian does the same thing, but with data. Treating data sources like a Michelin chef treats individual dishes, not as single inputs, but as key elements that reinforce, that elevate, that escalate the overall experience. Because this is how we get a seat at the table. When we're just bringing individual findings, we're a vendor. But when we bring a layered story that goes across sources, we're that strategic partner. We're not just answering the question that was asked, we're reframing it towards a question that should have been asked, and is that worth asking? And that's really the value of being that insights culinarian. So if you want to go on this mantle and be an insights culinarian, looking ahead to Monday, some 3 questions for you to consider. First, what's your go-to dish? What single source, single program are you working with today, and what does it answer for us? And then second, what's the next course? Using that creative curiosity, what type of data might help validate or deepen your finding? Who in your organization or outside your organization could help? And then third, who's your sous chef? There's lots of parts of the organization that might be trying to answer the same question, but from a different perspective. So who can you partner with to work together to answer a more comprehensive answer? So closing it out here, we all came into this field because we wanted to influence better products, better decisions, better outcomes. And to do that, we need a seat at the table. But our stakeholders they don't want a snack. They want a full meal. And so to do this, we need to be that insights culinarian, someone who brings it all together into that satisfying meal, leveraging our techniques, leveraging our recipes to design that cohesive meal itself. So with that, I'll close out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. I don't know about you guys, I'm feeling a little hungry now, but I love the metaphor. And I think I said earlier about how it's really important to be empathetic towards our stakeholders, especially execs. And I think the way you presented this makes a ton of sense. Like, execs don't care about, like, oh, I'm not, like, if you're a chef, like, I'm not a pastry chef, or I don't cook proteins, I just do veggies, or I don't do apps, I just do mains. Like, that, they don't care about that. Like, they don't care about those divisions of labor. They care about, like, what is the insight, the holistic insight that I need to know to make an important business decision and to influence where our company is heading. And if you can bring that all together, that helps them in a way that can really truly make an impact. So I love that metaphor. So my first question for you is, when you are trying to work with some of these stakeholders, I'm not going to name any names, but sometimes some of these partner teams aren't actually that willing to collaborate because they see their data as their data, and they want to kind of keep their data in their little silo, and they're feeling pretty protective of it. So how do you deal with those types of teams or stakeholders that maybe the data science team doesn't want to share their dashboards that they built, or they don't want to give you access to the full data warehouse? Again, I'm not going to name any names myself, but I have seen that come up before. So how do you deal with those situations?
Yeah, and for sure. I think it's underrated, the importance of relationships in building this. It doesn't happen immediately. It happens over time when you're aligning on shared perspectives, shared objectives. But there's also a little bit of a bull in the china shop that needs to happen too, because again, we're in this together. They might be owning one piece of the puzzle, but they're not owning the insight. And so are there ways to kind of deliver value, inch your way into it, but also just kind of take it a little bit back, because we're ultimately trying to answer the same sort of question.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think you can't just ask somebody on day one, hey, nice to meet you. Can you give me your full data set? They're like, wait, what's your name and why are you asking me for this? I think the relationships makes a ton of sense. Any questions for Anna from the audience? Okay. Oh, yeah, we got one in the middle here.
Hi, Anna. Thank you. I think as a foodie, you really got me on the metaphor. It was really engaging to sort of hear and, pay attention to the different courses. But my question for you is there a particular source that you sort of pay more attention to or give more importance to in your story, or is there a particular source that stakeholders are more interested to sort of hear from, and how do you sort of divide your attention between all these different sources?
Yeah, for sure. I'll say that I don't have a single playbook for every single question. I tend to kind of explore and advance depending on where the research question or my hypothesis take me. The tracker study that I mentioned, I've been working on it for 3 years. And so as we all know with tracking studies, it gets a little bit stale. And so you're always looking for that new perspective, that new insight to be able to showcase each time you're trying to report and drive impact within your organization. And so in that case, I always think about what's in my toolkit. Again, those 4 different courses, the one wine pairing, and really try to figure out what's going to be the most hero type metric for me at a particular moment in time. So for an example, earlier this year, there was a particular topic that was showcased within the tracking study that was like really spiking as a key driver. And in that case, it was the support feedback that was going to be the strongest validator for me to bring that in. So in that case, I spent a lot more time with my product operations partner to be able to weave that in and provide more validation, as opposed to when we were earlier in the tracking study looking to showcase value. That's when I was bringing in more of the macro signals to really showcase what was going on and help answer those intermediate questions as we were still getting used to what the program was telling us and how we could best use it.
Awesome. Yeah, we have another question up in the front. And guys, just FYI, as you're listening to these talks, please think about what are the questions I want to ask these amazing speakers. Like, I want this to be as participatory and inclusive as possible, so don't be shy about asking questions. All right, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Brilliant. I absolutely loved it. The analogy, the idea. I think, we sell ourselves a lot of the time as mixed method, but mixed source to me makes a lot of sense. My question is, when we're thinking about, projects that you're working on, a lot of the times for me, if I want to cook a 5-course meal, but the people I'm serving, want it immediately, and there's not really time for the elaborate concoctions that I want to create. I'm curious, in regards to maybe triaging these things for stakeholders, when you're working on a tight timeline, how do you kind of pick certain ones? I assume business telemetry might be effective for people who, look at numbers, but how do you think about things on a tight timeline?
Yeah. And whenever we're faced with questions, it's always that balance, right? Because we're evaluating not just the type of sources, we're thinking methodology, but we're thinking about timing, like what's really going to be feasible and the timing that we have available, but also right-sizing it with a particular question. So my question back would be, when they're asking for the tight timeline, is it a quick, more kind of directional type answer? Or is it a question that deserves more of a complete deep dive because it's going to have stronger implications down the line? Because we still have some power to be able to push back and say, this is what's possible in this immediate time frame, but your question deserves a lot more. If you give me 2 more days, 3 more days, I can give you a more comprehensive picture. It's really layering in kind of the pros and cons and thinking, again, what's feasible now versus what we could do if we had a lot more leeway within that. Do they really want a snack, or would they just be happier with like a bigger meal, like a burger or something like that?
Awesome. Well, Anna, I think we've reached the end of our time with you. Thank you. This is an amazing talk, and I think a really apt analogy. So
Thank you.
Join me. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. All right, so remember that metaphor. I'm definitely going to remember it as I go back to my day-to-day work at Slack, after thinking about how can we kind of enrich the meal we're offering to our stakeholders. And spot-on question at the end. Sometimes our stakeholders are showing up at the restaurant and wanting their food served immediately, so we have to think about how to give them food as quickly as possible. So lots of great Q&A. Thanks for the questions from the audience. All right, it's time for our third talk of the morning. It's time to introduce Angie and Teresa, who are coming to us to talk about how to bring methods together and unite insights. So Angie has a storied career. She worked with Teresa at Meta back in the day, and then Angie did some great research at Robinhood, and Teresa now leads the market research team at Asana. So together we're going to talk about how to unify the insights and work really closely with cross-functional partners who are thinking about the world from different perspectives. All right, thank you, Angie and Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I just want to make sure I have the clicker ready. So, hi, I'm Angie. There's a little bit of reverb here, but bear with me. So I believe the best experiences come from connected insights. So I've helped ship a lot of products from 0 to 1, from crypto wallets, AR glasses, and online editing tools, and so much more. But I've also had the privilege to build unified insights teams and supporting incredible researchers. And of course, I can't be here today without one of the best marketing insights partners to talk about unifying the insights.
Hi, I'm Teresa. My experience is in leading research teams through tricky research problems like how to launch a robot that doesn't exist, or what virtual world is going to help us best sell a device that won't exist for another 10 years. And now in the exciting world of work management, I'm pumped to share a portion of that journey here with you today.
Awesome. Okay, so bear with me. I want to do a little exercise. How many of you are market researchers? There has to be there. This is the market research section, right? Awesome. And how many of you do audience research? So segmentations, attitudes and usage studies, et cetera. Cool. And how many of the market researchers help prioritize features? I assume all of you. All right, cool. So the rest of you are, I'm assuming, user researchers and UXRs. So how many of you work to understand your users or do jobs to be done studies? Right? And how many of you help prioritize features or value props? Cool. So we have a lot more in common than we think. So we believe the most powerful decisions come from the intersection of insights. And what that really means is that when we come together, there's better decision making, greater stakeholder clarity, and we are able to build thoughtfully for the long term.
All right, now for something different. I'm going to show you 2 clips of 2 products that I helped launch. One was a great commercial success. The other one, not so much. Pay attention. We're going to ask you later which one you think did really well in market.
And another case of the kids in the treehouse. And Dad wanting to be.
Ladder.
Only a victory against Cosmo would grant him entry. A tough challenge, thanks to Dad's 100% failure rate. A rate he maintained.
What a time.
All right, you get the gist of what that product is. All right, now to our second product.
Hey, Vector, what's the weather?
Hey, Victor. Take a photo of me.
See you, Victor.
Hello. How can I help you?
Kona, what's the weather?
Rain, buying jacket, buying everything.
No.
Selling private information now.
No.
All right, you get the gist of what this product is. One was a success, one not so much. Keep your votes. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to leave you in suspense for just a moment. So sometimes, even though user and market researchers come into a product with the same goals, without a shared language or similar approaches, sometimes we work in silos, which can lead to misalignment of strategy. So generally, this is where we've seen our teams sit. This may not apply to you. Also, you may notice I'm going to use UXR and user research interchangeably just for the purposes of today. We know they're different. So with that, some of you may look at this and think, well, I actually do some of that other group over there. And that's kind of the point. So our stakeholders tend to ask whoever's sitting in the room with them or questions. And it's really up to us whether to answer directly or bring in our partner teams for a more holistic answer. And it's not just us in the room. We have all of these other really smart insights functions all around us who may not be on the same team or even talking to us on a given project. And of course, the elephant in the room of AI, where everyone has data now at their fingertips.
Cool. So where does this lead us? Before we get into the how, let's align on the why. So insights exist to inform decisions, right? So we need to start with the goals. So you're going to notice we like frameworks. This is our goal framework. So products need to define value and create a valuable experience. Marketing needs to communicate that value, right? Usually through a go-to-market strategy. And business needs to capture that value, usually through strategy and growth. And of course, everything centers around the user or your customers. And so then you take these goals and you translate that into the meaty research questions we're so good at asking. And then once you've aligned on your research questions, you'll likely map out a roadmap, right? And again, love frameworks. Using a framework can be quite helpful. So some companies might stagger insights through a purchase funnel framework. This isn't exhaustive, it's just illustrative, so you get a sense of different swim lanes. But you might use a different framework. I'm actually going to show you a different one that I've used. But the whole premise is that this is an exercise that helps you plan and prioritize for the longer term and also helps you identify areas of overlap so that you can figure out where you can swim in and where your partners can swim in. There's probably times where you come together, and there's probably times you're going to let them lead. So what does that look like in practice? Well, at my last company, we were looking to expand internationally into several new regions with limited budget. Story of all our lives, I'm sure. And no one was asking for research, which was very scary to me. But part of this is also on me to help carve out a path to show where research can inform these big decisions. So that meant bringing together our stakeholders, our researchers, together to align on goals. So for us, that was really to launch a scalable experience for that region, so that's your product, to the right audience with the right value, that's our marketing, and that's ultimately going to lead to, obviously, customer growth and market share, so our business value. So knowing all this is what helps us develop those critical questions, that next layer deep, that we want to answer and where we researchers can step in. So for me, we had another complication. So organizationally, I needed to figure out resourcing. I intentionally did not hire because I had a long-term vision that every researcher would have an international exposure eventually. And I wanted to provide stretch goals for those looking for leadership opportunities beyond their scope. So in our case, a paired model made a lot of sense. So that's one market researcher and one user research coming together for each new region and allowed each other to play to our strengths, but also balance out that workload. And so, of course, with the new working team that we had, including some of our local leaders, that early alignment on our shared goals that I shared before also provided us with a common purpose. It helped us as a research team share with every single function that we were working together with what we could do. And then finally, like just how you launch a product with an MVP, you test and learn, we did the same with research. We started with a small pilot study, demonstrated our value, and then scaled out a full roadmap. So, ta-da, another framework, right? So earlier you saw the funnel framework. In this case, for one of our regions, we used a different framework. Some of you might recognize it, it's kind of double diamond-ish, but really the whole premise is there's no prescribed way to approach this. It's a very, very fluid process, and I recommend that you pick something that your company understands and you plan together. So again, not exhaustive, but might give you an idea of what you could do as a team. So what was important for us was that our insights roles were not working sequentially. We actually wanted to find moments where we could all come together so that we could constantly form and build off each other. And so what happened? So region's not launched yet, soon I hope, but we identified gaps in the navigation experience, the product experience. We were able to work with design, product, and engineering to advocate and create new localized products that actually had global implications. We actually unlocked a different type of investor, one that had much more expectations than what we were used to, especially in the US. So we understand and found how to reach them and differentiate them with marketing. And we worked with BizOps and finance to inform additional market entry go, no-go decisions with much more confidence. So one little thing I'm proud of was convincing leadership to bring the entire working team on an 18-hour flight to the land of the cinematic masterpiece, Crazy Rich Asians. It's a great movie, great book, highly, love it. I'm sure you've watched it many times. But the whole premise of that was to be in the homes with our future customers, live testing, rapidly iterating, spending time strategizing with our local Asia team in person. All of this helped us build a better product, new ways of resourcing, and trust with leadership. But I think most importantly, it helped us build trust with each other. So that partnership was just as valuable as the insights we found. Awesome. Teresa?
All right, now back to our robots. It was a tale of two robots, a tale as old as time, if you will. Now, remember, we had the little white robot and the little gray robot. Which one do you all think was the commercial success? Who thinks it was the first one? Who thinks it was the second one? Ooh, all right. So actually, it was our first robot, Cosmo. So why did this robot do so well in market? What went right? We had a really tricky problem. We had to launch this product. We had limited marketing budget. We had two target audiences. We had the kids, we had the parents. There were audacious revenue goals, and product had to build all of these new features. How did that go? Well, from a research perspective, we did all the things that you do when you launch a new product, feature prioritization, segmentation, you know the drill, right? We also had a really cool user market research partnership where we got these kids in a room, played with the robots, kept a couple of them back, asked them questions why, and we had our product and engineering folks in the back room. Let me tell you, I did not need to convince them to build a driving function into this robots when all of these kids were right there telling them to do it. So that was great, but it wasn't just us. Data science helped size the target audience. Channel partners helped us figure out the retail reach. Finance went in and partnered with us together to figure out signals for how we were going to do in market. Ended up, we had product market fit. The product delivered on what the customers were expecting. Parents were thrilled to pay for this. We ended up being a #1 Amazon bestseller. And it was a really fun team sport. Everybody pulled in together. And then, when robots attack, what happened here? So it was the same company. It was the same team. It was 1 year later. What happened here? Vector was a more advanced robot. And it flopped. Why? Well, kids wanted Cosmo to have a buddy robot, And we were building an uncle robot, if you will. So what was the root of what happened here? We didn't have alignment between what people wanted to buy and what we were building. And then, probably more importantly, between the insights functions, while we were all very well connected, we didn't communicate and integrate the insights quickly enough to explain to leadership how dire that gap was in time for them to make some really hard decisions before the holidays. So we launched without product market fit. The product didn't deliver on what the folks wanted to buy it for, and we ended up missing those revenue goals. Now, could the best insights in the world have saved this robot at launch? Maybe not. Did things go off the rails a little bit faster because we weren't as integrated as we could have been? Maybe. But now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a structure to help you set yourselves up for success so you don't end up launching your own weird robot uncle.
Yeah. So when I saw that Vector commercial, all I could think about was Terminator, and that is not what I want for an uncle, so we're good with that. OK, so more frameworks. So now that we've shared our own experience, we wanted to map out a very actionable partnerships framework for you. And I'm sure some of you have done some of these actions. But really, the premise is obviously connect. So you want to build that foundation of trust and openness. You want to communicate, so create open channels of sharing. You want to integrate, embed your insights into ways of working. And you want to amplify, so drive impact together.
And how this worked at Asana is we had a big project to update our onboarding experience. So as you might imagine, we connected over kombucha catch-ups with all the different insight functions. We put a plan together where we communicated in a Figma Jamboard all the things we knew and hypothesized about what might be going wrong. We integrated the plan, oversampled our new users and our CSAT tracker that already existed. User research set up some one-on-one with folks on different stages of the onboarding journey. And then data science took a look at what people were actually doing so we could understand the gap in what was not going, what was getting lost in translation. Then we amplified those learnings with data science models that help marketers predict what folks should be doing next, and workshops all around Asana and more. And they live on today in data science experiments.
Sounds awesome. And so this one, not suitable for presentation, but great for y'all to screenshot if you want. It's just a fuller version of what we just showed, and we're happy to share this afterwards. But more importantly, we really want to hear from you, your own examples of what worked really well, so we can continue to develop this.
So while we may do more or less of any given thing, there's a lot of overlap that we share. And it means we're all thinking about the same kinds of opportunities and questions. But the answers are better when we work together. Yeah. And selfishly, these partnership ends up giving us a lot of transferable skills. And in this job market, we'll take everything that we can get. So these are just some of the transitions we've seen folks on our teams make moves career-wise after doing some of these partnerships. Yeah. So here's where we leave you. The most powerful decisions come from the intersection of insights, not from market research alone.
Not from user research alone, but really from multiple insights functions working together to see the full picture.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I love that ending. I totally agree that if you bring insights together, it is truly the case where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think you guys had some great examples of how to do that really effectively and collaboratively. So I'll give you one quick little metaphor. I love playing with Legos. I have two boys who also love Legos. And it's okay to have like a Lego set and you kind of build it by yourself and you put together exactly what the package says. It's a lot more fun actually to combine Legos with your friends or your siblings.
Yep.
And you can create this like monster Lego set that was kind of like unforeseen, and it's like unlocks a lot of creativity, and then the end result is way cooler than if you did exactly what the box said with just your one little set of Legos by itself. And I think that like metaphor extends to insights as well. Like you combine with your friends from other teams and other functions, and you unlock a really cool set of insights that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. And I think the examples you gave were an amazing insight into that. So thank you.
Cool.
Also, I love the frameworks. Such a gold mine of frameworks you guys had in your deck. I think you'll share that on LinkedIn afterwards. Is that right?
Yep.
So
Happy to share if you want access to all the frameworks.
if you guys don't follow Teresa and Angie, please check them out on LinkedIn. You can get their gold mine of frameworks right there. All right, with that, I will open it up to the audience. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll give you a mic. We have one in the back corner there. And one ask is to introduce yourself, your name, and where you're coming from. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shreya. I'm coming from San Jose, California, so just an hour south, drove on up to the North Bay Area. My question is, when the stakeholders that you're trying to deliver your insights to are asking you to share data faster, but you don't have all of the pieces for that cohesive story together, what are your sort of recommendations on how to push back to tell them you want to wait until you get all the data because it gives you those robust recommendations?
Yeah, so a lot of the work I showed, and also just from my past experiences, we do try to work in a rapid research iteration. So truthfully, we are sharing data like every day in a way. We do try to set up some expectations ahead of time, like, hey, this is only so much of the picture. Afterwards, you know, fast follow will show the full thing. But the truth is, it's like every day you're, say, in field, or, you know, every day we were in Singapore talking to someone, we were pivoting and iterating with that data to build and rebuild our prototypes and just what we learned. So by at the end, we had something like a fuller picture. It does help to set up some of those workshops or strategy sessions. That was a big thing for us. So we had 2 scheduled in 1 week. But then afterwards, you could also have that. So it sets some certain gates and expectations of what's to come, and you can kind of control that. Yeah.
One thing I'd add is that when you've only been in field for 1 day and you have a tiny bit of data, but folks are still banging down your door, I've started using a low, medium, high confidence updates. So with a low level of confidence, I can tell you today, people do not want this, or they're very excited about driving. And that just helps our stakeholders frame, this answer might change because our confidence is really low. If you give me another day, I might tell you something different.
I think you're going to have like a vector day or a Cosmo day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like having, like sometimes you know, and you're like, hey, I can tell you right off the bat, like this is just not going to land. Or you know what, early signal is still developing, but we're like pretty confident. And sometimes you're like, we need more data, and like it's okay. It's okay, I think, to say to your stakeholders, like give us time. We need to like develop the insights, and we can't rush into something because like we say this a lot at Slack. The only thing worse than no data is bad data. You don't want to rush into a decision that you can't undo because you're rushing. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, right here.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm from Brooklyn. And I'm curious, you know, you guys talked a lot about collaborating across teams. I actually lead a combined team of market research, UX research, strategic researchers that serves the whole organization. And I feel like that's a trend, but I'm curious what you guys are seeing and if you think the next iteration of research is more centralized or if we're going to break out and become embedded again. Just curious for your take.
I think we have some thoughts on this. We've been seeing a cycle. So personally, I've been seeing we've been decentralizing and embedding, but just you wait a year or two, it's all going to come together. I've seen that through my entire career. It's like this. But the caveat with that is depends how big your organization is. So the larger you are, most likely you're going to stay siloed. The smaller you are, like, you know, organizations like I was last in, we were able to have the luxury of actually building it together because we were like, so we could operate so much more nimbly. But yeah, there's a lot of factors at play. Yeah.
Plus one. It's a constantly moving pendulum.
Also, shout out New York. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, right here.
Hello, I'm Safia. I'm a mixed match researcher at JetBrains. And my question is, do you see any, like, or maybe foresee any challenges or changes in these frameworks in a AI era, in AI time when like products could be shipped in like days or weeks?
I missed the second part. So you're saying if there's any challenges we saw with the timelines?
Yes, challenges or changes in these frameworks.
Yeah. So the frameworks are supposed to be fluid. So like high level, it gives you a little structure to help map out things. So it's kind of like We had one that was the funnel, and like it could depend where you are in the funnel too. You might not need the whole thing. I showed one that was basically a double diamond with a little modification, and usually that's like, you know, cyclical here, cyclical there. So a lot of that's pretty fluid, and not gonna lie, we pivoted every single time we found more information. So what you're saying is spot on. Like, we had to adapt for, you know, what we found. We had to adapt for speed sometimes. There were some projects that we actually moved really quick. There are some projects, because of regulatory delay, that we had the luxury of time. So it should be a very fluid process for you. Yeah.
And I'll just add that nice story that I talked about at Asana, where we improved the onboarding experience. Every team had a role. Of course, that project stopped and started 10 times. People left, people joined, things transitioned. So the end result, yes, I could put it in a nice framework, but when you're in the moment, it was a very fluid situation.
Yep.
Well, thank you. This is an amazing talk, some great insights, and more importantly, some great frameworks to take back to your day-to-day work at your own company. So check them out on social media. They'll post their frameworks there. And join me in thanking Teresa and Angie for their great talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, we're going to turn it over to one of our sponsors. This event is an amazing event, bringing together so many researchers, and it's free, both to tune in live and to be here in person. That's thanks in large part to our sponsors. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our sponsors from User Interviews to give a quick word on their product.
Appreciate it. Well, hello. I'm Glenn with the User Interviews team. It's really inspiring to see so many researchers all in one place. It's builders and creators just like you that we've leaned on to ask the hard questions. What's next? What's working? And where do we go from here? So over a decade, we focused on bridging those gaps in research just for you. So to help you ultimately move faster and confidently in a rapidly changing market. So whether you're looking to centralize the research on your own users or recruit externally, we've scaled our panel of 6.5 million participants so that you can ultimately talk to those consumers or those niche professionals. So ultimately recruit, qualify, and incentivize all in one platform. When we look at the recent acquisition with user testing, we've ultimately connected the User Interviews high-quality participants with a global insights platform. This is giving customers access to deeper, more scalable insights. And ultimately, as we think about where research pushes forward, we've asked people who do research, what are some themes that they want to focus on today? Those are around faster study creation with AI scalability, and ultimately maintaining quality of panel with multi-layered fraud prevention to allow you guys to ultimately identify and expand as we expand on those pillars. We ultimately are really focused on the panel quality and scalable insights. So you can actually scan the QR code above for 3 free participants, and we'll be at booth C1 if you guys want to learn more. Appreciate it.
Minutes. So 12-minute break.
UX research teams today are under pressure, struggling to reach quality participants, navigating fragmented tools, and constantly being asked to prove impact. But what if you could change that? With Alida, you can access verified participants from your own community or external sample on demand. Get always-on insight into user behavior and evolving trends, and bring qual and quant together in one unified platform. Run unmoderated usability studies across mobile and desktop. Capture real interactions with Think Aloud video and screen recording. Test Figma prototypes to validate ideas early. And uncover how users think with card sorting and tree testing. All powered by an embedded AI research assistant, helping you analyze faster, reduce manual work, and surface insights that actually drive decisions. See how you can level up your research program. Visit alida.com.
Great products start with listening to real people, understanding their needs, their behaviors, what matters to them. But when budgets tighten and timelines shrink, research gets complicated, split across tools and teams. Listna brings it all together. Building a study takes minutes. Mix and match methods across usability tests and surveys, or talk directly to your users through interviews. When you're ready, recruit verified participants from the Listna panel, or bring your own. Built to scale across teams with the controls and flexibility organizations need. Secure, compliant, enterprise ready. AI that works alongside you, helping you move faster. Turn insights into confident decisions and build products people love. No long-term lock-ins, no complexity. Just thoughtful research tools for teams who put users first. Listna.
And today I'm so excited to announce our official platinum sponsor, Tarek. Take it away, Zach.
Hi, Research Week. I'm Zach, the founder of Tarek. We're incredibly excited to be sponsoring Research Week in a big way this year and are appreciative of learners and the broader research community for welcoming us with open arms. When we started Tarek about a year ago, we spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours talking to researchers in different disciplines, different team sizes, and across the world. Regardless of budgets or what a team looked like, one thing remained consistent throughout all those conversations. People wanted higher quality participants to power the research that you all do. We built Tarek from the ground up with an AI-first approach, introducing things like conversational profiling and AI-led screening that elicit more from participants so we can catch fraud before it reaches you. I'm excited to meet everyone this week, and whether you're in person or virtual, I'd love to connect and learn more about the work that you're doing. Excited for this week, and go learners. See everyone soon.
Your research data is spread across everywhere and every team. So you end up losing important insights and find yourself repeating the same research you did only a few months ago. What a pain in the brass. But it doesn't have to be this way. Meet Marvin. With Marvin, you can store all your user feedback, like interviews, surveys, support tickets, sales calls, and reports in one place. Marvin comes with unbelievably powerful AI that helps you connect the dots across all your customer research. Think of it as your own AI research assistant. Create a research repository that empowers everyone, not just the researchers, to find the answers the way they want, when they want them. No more wasting time and resources resurrecting old research. All this while keeping your data secure and hiding your participants' private info. Want to make better decisions based on user research? Sign up for a demo today.
The entire point of research is to inform better decisions. And if it's not doing that, then what are we actually measuring? So if we think about who's on the receiving end of our research for a second, they're time poor, they're context switching constantly, they're drowning in dashboards and AI summaries and back-to-back meetings. And your research is competing in that environment, not just against bad research, but against opinions, anecdotes, gut feel, and my personal favorite, the person who just got back from a customer visit and has a very strong take. Giving stakeholders just the findings is interesting, sure, but interesting isn't usable. It falls flat. It gets stored away, it gets forgotten about, so we have to go one step further. And that step, in my mind, is content design. And it's a craft, one that many of us were probably never taught because research training focuses almost entirely on the front end, how to collect and analyze data, and almost never on the back end, how to make it land. Content is the UX of insight, and great technology with bad UX still fails. So what does good insight content actually look like? I want to share my framework with you. It's not just a list of tips, but a way of thinking that you can apply every single time you sit down to design a piece of research content. I call it BCRA, 4 dimensions, 4 things to ask yourself before anything goes out the door. So B, the brief. What is this research actually for? C, clarity. Can anyone understand this immediately without effort? R, relevance. Does it speak directly to this audience's world? And A, actionability. Does it give them somewhere to go? For each one, as I mentioned, I'm going to start with the human bias that we're up against, because understanding why our brains make this hard is what's going to make the fix stick. Then we'll look at what the failure mode actually looks like in practice and the craft move to fix it. So the brief is dimension 0. It's the thing that has to exist before the other 3 can work. It's asking, what is this research actually for? What's the business moment it's responding to? Why are we doing this now? Is it the backbone of a campaign? Is it informing a fundamental shift in how we message to our particular audience? Is it the evidence base for a strategic bet that someone needs to make? And if you don't know the answer to those questions, you can't design content that lands, because you won't know what landing even looks like. And the bias that we're up against here is called the curse of knowledge, which is that once you know something, you can't imagine ever not knowing it. And so at the brief stage, this means you might assume the stakeholder knows exactly what they need, and the stakeholder might assume that you know exactly what they mean. But in my experience, often neither is true. So many researchers might be inclined to treat the brief as admin. It arrives, you read it, you go and you do the research, job done. But here's the problem. Briefs are often written before the stakeholder has fully thought through what they actually need. So here's what that looks like in practice. We want to understand how users are feeling about the onboarding experience and identify areas for improvement. Sounds reasonable enough, but if we read it again, what decision does this actually inform? What would we do differently based on what we find? It's completely unclear. The brief will get you a perfectly competent research report that might very well sit in a folder and drive little to no impact. So, interrogate the brief, but gently. This isn't about criticizing the stakeholder who wrote it. It's about asking the question that makes the research matter. What decision will this research inform? So not what do you want to know, but what will you do differently depending on what we find? So here's the same brief after we've interrogated it. We're deciding whether to invest in a full onboarding redesign in Q3. We need to understand where users are dropping off and why, so we can make the case to leadership. Same topic, completely different North Star. And now I know exactly what I'm building toward. So AI is a really easy way to stress test the brief. Ask it, what decision does this research need to inform? What's ambiguous or missing? And this can give you a really solid starting point in your interrogation before you've spent a week going in the wrong direction. And a little tip that I've actually just implemented is downloading skills from GitHub. So for my area of work, I downloaded the market research skill MD, and I uploaded it into Claude Cowork. So it essentially acts as an extension of my team being just me, team of one. So it's great. OK, so now let's talk about clarity. Clarity is about asking if someone with zero research experience picked this up, would they understand it immediately? Or would they have to read it multiple times, triangulate between slides, and piece together what it's actually saying? If it's the latter, we've already lost them. Not because they're not smart enough, but because we've made them do work that we could have done for them. And we're up against 3 different biases here. The curse of knowledge again, because familiarity kills your sense of what's surprising. You spent weeks with the data, so the finding that might have seemed shocking on day 1, week 1, feels really obvious to you now, and you may inadvertently bury it. 2 is cognitive load. So as we know, overloaded brains tend to default to shortcuts. So dense and jargon-heavy content doesn't get engaged with deeply, and instead it gets filed under, I'll read this later. And lastly, fluency heuristic. Clarity signals credibility. If content is hard to process, people don't just disengage, they actually trust it less. So ease of reading is definitely not just a cosmetic concern. So with those biases in mind, 2 things kill clarity in research content. The first is obvious, that jargon, methodology-heavy framing, way too many caveats. But the second is sneakier, and I think it's actually much more damaging. And it's that we may, as I mentioned, breeze past the most exciting findings because we've lived and breathed with them for weeks, and they no longer feel surprising or maybe even interesting to us. So here's what a clarity failure looks like. Study findings indicate that 34% of respondents reported experiencing difficulty navigating the checkout flow with statistically significant variation across device type. It's accurate. It's also pretty useless to a product manager who maybe has 30 seconds and just needs to know what to do. So read your content back as if you know nothing. Ask yourself, what would be surprising to a completely fresh set of eyes? Because surprising is what makes people pay attention. So lead with that, not with the methodology. So here's that same finding with clarity applied. 1 in 3 customers gets lost at checkout, and it's twice as bad on mobile. It's the same data, but your reader can now do something with that. Relevance. Relevance is about specificity, not just, is this interesting, but is this interesting to this person in this role dealing with this challenge right now? So the question to ask yourself, will my audience feel like this was made for them? Or will they have to do the mental work to figure out what it means for them personally? Because the truth is, in my experience, most stakeholders, will not do that mental work. If the connection to their world isn't obvious, They'll file it under, yeah, this is interesting, but maybe not for me, and they'll just move on. So the bias that we're up against here is availability bias. What feels personally relevant is easier to recall, and what's easier to recall feels more important. Content that speaks directly to someone's world doesn't just land better, it stays. The failure mode here looks like generic findings, research that could apply to any team, any product, any context. It's technically accurate and professionally presented and forgettable. So here's what that looks like. You send the same 40-slide report to the product team, the marketing team, and the exec. Everyone gets everything. The product team skims for UX findings, marketing skims for messaging angles, the exec reads the summary and moves on. Everyone got something, but nobody got what they actually needed. So know your audience before you design the content, not after. So what relevance looks like in practice is for the product team, maybe it's behavioral patterns, specific drop-off points, and friction in the experience, the things that they can act on in their next sprint. For marketing, maybe it's how customers describe their own problems in their own words, ready to be turned into messaging. And for the exec, it's the strategic implication and the recommended decision. One page, no methodology. So it's the same research, 3 different outputs, and absolutely that used to mean triple the work for us, which is exactly why I think a lot of us couldn't or couldn't do it. So this is the particular AI use case that I am most jazzed about. Because you can take one piece of research that you, the researcher, have created and ask AI to reformat it for those different stakeholder audiences. So it might not be perfect, but it can get you sort of 80% of the way there in minutes rather than days or weeks like it would have in the past. So this is really relevance at scale. So just a personal example is recently I created an in-depth report on one of my priority audiences. It was a very meaty 30-slide Canva deck built for my product marketing team, and it had the level of depth that they really needed in order to update our messaging accordingly. I then used Claude to turn it into an interactive artifact and ultimately a Canva website for my time-poor stakeholders who just need the answer. They just need the so what. And then I also used Notebook LM to turn it into a video summary because I have some senior stakeholders who much prefer visual outputs. So it's just one example of how AI has really been helping me to scale my work. All right, actionability. Actionability is the difference between insight that informs and insight that moves. It's asking, does this give the stakeholders somewhere to go? And I mean both kinds of somewhere. Tactical, what can we do right now, this sprint, this quarter? And strategic, what does this mean for the bigger picture and the long-term direction? Both matter, because tactical without strategic feels reactive, and strategic without tactical feels abstract. So the magic really is in having both. And the biases that we're up against here are loss aversion. So people respond more strongly to potential losses than equivalent gains. So insights framed as risks actually outperform those framed as opportunities. So instead of we could grow revenue by 10%, we say we are leaving 10% revenue on the table. And then choice architecture. If you leave the path forward open-ended, decision fatigue kicks in, and maybe nothing happens. So can we design the next step into the content itself and make it really obvious and not optional? So insight without implication creates paralysis. I'm sure you've seen this. I have many times. Someone reads a great piece of research, they nod along, and then they ask, so what do we do about it? And if they're asking that question, then the content itself hasn't done the job. So here's what that looks like. Customers report confusion during the onboarding flow. End of slide. I think sometimes we as researchers might resist making recommendations because maybe it feels like it's overstepping or we are moving outside of our lane. But I actually think there's an opportunity for a reframe, which is recommendations aren't overstepping. They're the whole point. And we're the ones who did the research. We know the data better than anyone else in the room. And if we don't connect it to action, then who will? So every insight should have a so what and a now what. The so what connects the finding to why it matters. The now what makes the path forward explicit. So here's that same finding with actionability built in. Confusion in onboarding is causing an estimated 20% drop-off in the first week. That's 1 in 5 customers lost before they've ever seen the product's core value. And then here are 2 recommendations, which include both tactical and strategic, to provide to your stakeholders. They might not do these exact things, but these could serve as great thought starters for the next steps that they actually do take to action on that insight. So now there's a so what and a now what. Now someone can do something. OK, so my favorite slide. We've been through all 4 dimensions. And I want to show you what that looks like when they all fire at once, because I think the difference is pretty dramatic. So what failure looks like. A 40-slide deck lands in someone's inbox. The brief was never interrogated, so the research answers a question that maybe nobody was actually trying to ask. The findings are buried in methodology. There's no acknowledgement of which team this is for or what they do. And it ends with the data. No implications, no recommendations, just data. It gets a reply that says, really interesting, thanks, and then nothing. So what excellence looks like. The same research, redesigned. It opens with the business question it's answering and why it matters right now. The key finding is on slide 1 in plain English, and there are 3 versions. One for example, one for the exec, one for the product team, and one for marketing. And it ends with a clear recommendation and a recommended action, framed as a risk. Here's what we're leaving on the table if we don't act on this. It's the same research, and it's completely different fate in the organization. And that's what BCRA unlocks. So here's where I want to leave you. The BCRA framework is practical. You can apply it tomorrow. But it's also pointing at something bigger. The most effective insight professionals of the next decade won't just be brilliant analysts. They'll be what I'd like to call insight architects, people who can do 3 things: discover truth through rigorous research, shape meaning through behavioral science and smart framing, and drive action through content design that closes the gap between knowing and doing. And that's definitely not a smaller job than the one we have now. It's bigger, and I would argue it's actually more important. Half our job is the research, but the other half is evangelizing, communicating, bringing people along. And in my opinion, content is not the final step in the research process. It is the research process, or at least it's inseparable from it. If insight doesn't drive action and decision, the research didn't work, no matter how airtight the methodology was. If we own the insight, we also own how it lands. In a world where everyone has access to data, where AI can synthesize 1,000 data points in seconds, the advantage doesn't go to the team with the best analysis. It goes to the team that can turn insight into action. So, interrogate the brief ruthlessly. Design for clarity, like someone's attention depends on it, because it does. Make it feel like it was built for the person that was reading it, and never ever deliver a finding without telling people what they can do about it. That's the craft, that's the job, and I think that's what separates truly stellar researchers. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rachel. That was such a great talk. I feel like I want that message like injected straight into my veins. I say this to my team all the time, like if you could do the best research you've ever done in your entire career, but it doesn't land, it's actually not the best research. It's probably one of the worst, because it's like producing a research deliverable that doesn't have impact is like a tree falling in the woods with nobody to see it, right? You have to have a report that is truly internalized by your stakeholders and has that impact, like just like you said. And yeah, like that whole message really, really resonated with me personally. So I love it. All right, with that, I will open it up to the audience. Any questions for Rachel on her talk? If not, I can jump in because I have a couple. Also, while you guys think about your questions you want to ask, one question for you, Rachel, for me is going back to AI. So you talked about how you're a team of 1 and you have a lot of ground to cover, and AI can help improve your productivity. But we also, like the flip side of AI is that can produce AI slop. And you know, thinking about content, you know, how, you know, you talked about how AI can help you kind of take your research artifact and make it a little bit more tailored to some of the different audiences, which I love that use case. But how do you do that without avoiding the curse of AI slop? Because you don't want to, you know, hey, exec, here's a 1-pager summary of my research, but it just kind of looks like anything else you might see from AI. How do you avoid that?
For sure. So when I was talking about the particular example of changing content into multiple different formats, I made very clear to emphasize that this is the work that you, the researcher, did yourself. I think that's the first thing. I know we hear a lot about human in the loop, but I actually think it's more about like human at the helm, because I think like ultimately these should be our ideas. And like I've said, we're the ones who are closest to it. We know it better than anyone, and that includes AI. AI is fantastic and smart and brilliant and all these great things, but it doesn't have the same context and connection to the work that we do ourselves. So I think the most important thing is like, I think a lot of people talk about, do you use AI as a first step or a last step? I'm definitely in the camp of using it more as a last step, to refine and sort of scale rather than create or start from scratch. So that's just one note. But I think other ways that I'm using it, I mean, my co-work is kind of out of control at this point with how many different things I've connected, different skills I've embedded. If I have worked on multi-part survey, I'll create it as a custom project that multiple parts of my team can access, which I think is also a scary thing because you're essentially democratizing the access to your data, whereas I think historically, people would have to come to you for it. But I actually haven't found that this makes people come to me less. I've found like it has people come to me more, but with smarter questions. So I'm not just like going through the data and pulling a data point out for them because they can do that themselves. They're then coming to me and being like, okay, this is super interesting. I found this one data point. Like, can you help me understand what it means and help contextualize it? So I think that's a good way of kind of making sure that you're still very much involved in the process.
Yeah, human at the helm. I love that framing. I'm going to take that one with me for sure. And we actually did at Slack, we did a similar research project of like, how does AI use affect human-to-human collaboration? And what we found is it doesn't, if you're using AI, you don't talk to humans less. You talk to them actually about the same, but with kind of more engaging questions, because like there's kind of like one-off short questions you just go to AI for, and then you're talking to humans for kind of the more engaging stuff.
Absolutely, yep. I also, big fan of using it to soften certain things that I'm saying. I've been told I'm really direct and blunt in written form, and so I use AI all the time. I'm like, can I just bounce this off of you and tell me how you, as a stranger, might perceive this? So that's also helped me in my human communication.
Yeah, it's a good sounding board for sure. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, we got one here in the corner.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. My question is more about how do you prioritize which audience you need to build for first? I have a lot of different stakeholders. Engineering is sometimes involved. And most of the research that I need to present is presented to all of them at the same time, so they all need their so what and now what. How would you go about prioritizing for such different audiences, and especially when they seem to respond to information in very different ways?
Yep, absolutely. And I am definitely in your same boat with a myriad of different stakeholders and audiences. I go back to that first step of interrogating the brief. So really trying to understand like what is the business going to do differently. And I think oftentimes what we actually might find is that the business is exploring potentially creating a new product offering or a new feature or something like that. So marketing, there shouldn't be involved at that stage. I mean, it might be interesting to them, but the takeaways I'm really going to root are directed at that product audience. So I recently did, potential vertical expansion project, and ultimately our go-to-market team, our marketing team, they can't really action on it if the product isn't there yet. And so even though the ask actually originated from marketing, my recommendations were for product. So I did get everybody in a room together, and I was like, first, I literally mapped it out. It was like a stoplight. I was like, here's what needs to happen first. Once product, if this is the path that we choose to go down, once product does its thing, then marketing can come in, and then go to market and sales and so on. So yeah, I just go back to really at that first stage of interrogating the brief, and like I said, I've absolutely pivoted and be like, yeah, I know I got this request from this particular team, but actually I think it's maybe even more valuable for this other team at this moment in time.
Awesome. Well, I think that is all the time we have with Rachel today. Please join me in thanking her for this amazing talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Take care.
All right, we are 4 talks down, 1 to go, and I'm really excited now to welcome to the stage Apurva Ludi, who has done a lot of different insights functions over her career. She's done biz ops, she's done research, she's done market research, and is now working on a really cool AI startup that she's building herself. So Apurva and I are going to have an awesome conversation about how to bring insights into the fold across different operations, different functions, and different lenses. So welcome, Apurva.
All right. Okay. So I thought I'd kick things off, and then yeah, would love to have this conversation with you, Lucas. But you know, a little bit of background about me. I have been in market research and user research for 15 years now, and have done the FANG bingo card. Have worked at Microsoft, Meta, most recently at Discord. And the hardest part for me and my team was never doing the research. It was the 48 hours that came after the research, right? How do you take your findings, translate them, get them to land, and get your stakeholders to actually take action? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Go 2 slides. Nice. One more slide. Okay, perfect. So what we found, and what I've found in my experience, is that the real gap isn't, you know, again, in the research or the insights, it's the translation. We've been trained for most of our careers to believe that if the research is good enough, then that's all you need. It speaks for itself. But the same finding, let's take an example finding that we frequently heard at Discord. Users find onboarding to the product to be too complex. That one finding can be interpreted many different ways depending on your audience, right? The designer might look at that insight and say, well, the interaction pattern's solid. This is a content problem. The PM might look at this and say, oh, well, is this blocking or is it just user friction? And can we deal with it later, after launch? A data scientist might look at this and say, well, what's the end? Is it even representative? The market researcher or marketer might look at it and say, are these even our target users? What's the messaging that we need to go out with? And a VP or leadership might look at this and say, well, should we delay launch? Nobody's wrong. These are all valid questions. But everyone is interpreting the so what in their own language. And so the designer's so what might be the craft. Product and engineering so what is usually the roadmap, right? Related to milestones and execution. Data scientist so what is often the rigor. The marketer so what is the messaging, the narrative. And the leadership person in the room, right there, so what is going to be the business bet? Do I take this bet or do I not take this bet? And the customer, well, the customer doesn't have a seat at the table, and that's our job, right? Our job is to be the through line and to give the voice of the customer a seat at this decision-making table. You know, we need to look at this and say, what does this mean for the roadmap? And here's why customers won't wait until next quarter. And this is what it means from a revenue risk perspective if we don't ship and address this issue now. So you're not just translating findings. You're translating on behalf of the customer. You're making sure the customer has a seat at the table and that the decision ultimately can get made. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with some examples that I brought.
Yeah, I love that framing of like, we are basically the spokesperson for the customer and for the user. And like, they are not in the room where some of these conversations are happening, but we have that job as an insights professional to bring their voice into these conversations and make sure their needs, their preferences, what's going on in their head is represented at the table as these conversations are being kind of discussed. So let's start with data science. I think, raise your hand if you're in this room and you work closely with data scientists, you talk to them at least once a week. So not everybody, but I would say definitely over half. That's at Slack, we work really closely with our data science partners to figure out what's going on the behavioral side of things. So let me ask you a question. When you're talking to a data scientist, oftentimes their first thing that comes into their head is like, we got to do an A/B test. We've got to do an experiment. And you're like, okay, maybe, but how do you kind of like respond when like, they're like, if you're like, oh, there's an interesting pattern I'm seeing when talking to customers, or I'm seeing in my qualitative data, and they're like, well, we need to A/B test this, or we need to experiment. Like, how do you respond to like their seemingly constant requests for experimentation, which is often well placed?
Yeah, I love working with data science. At Discord, I was fortunate to have managed both the team of data scientists as well as market researchers and user researchers, and they can go deep really fast. And so what we found was really effective was to work with them to define the problems that we were trying to address and the questions that we were trying to answer. So I'll give you an example. This was from my time at Meta. I think maybe second slide after this. We'll come back to this one. So when data science asks what should we measure, the researcher's job is to kind of figure out, hey, how do we determine what the measurement is based on the business problem at hand and work together with data scientists to frame that problem. So at Meta, I worked on a product called Portal. Maybe some of you remember it. It's now discontinued. It was their foray into smart home devices. And the data science team really was pushing product to work on all of these smart home features because we were third to market. Alexa and Google Home Hub devices were already out there, and the thinking was, well, if we can get to feature parity on smart home features, then we can compete. Now, what we found in deep qualitative user research, and then also market research, is that what people really found differentiated about this product and what they got the most value out of it once they actually purchased the product and started using it was for video calling. It was uniquely good at this. You had grandparents and children and families spread across time zones that were really using this product and getting value out of it for connecting with their loved ones. And so, we went to data scientists. We took this finding and kind of said, hey, I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to optimize for more sales, more engagement. We're trying to grow the business. Instead of just trying to grow the business in a very crowded market, smart home, what if we looked at what our best users were doing and then tried to find more of our best users out there? And that totally changed, the way that we were all approaching the problem. And data science was really excited to kind of explore this theory. And because, we were part of Facebook, we took a more digital kind of first approach to finding these users. We called them lookalike audiences, and it was quite successful. So I think in this case, it was about taking that insight and translating that into a language that data science could hear, which is, hey, let's ask the question differently, but then use data science methods to actually go size this new market.
I love that example. It's great to get to the North Star we have with a lot of confidence. But stepping back is like, is this even the right North Star? And like, do we need to rethink about where we're optimizing in the first place? I love that kind of framework. Let's go back to design. So, love it, designers, raise your hand if you work closely with the design team, or maybe even report into a designer. So even more than data science. And design often thinks a lot about craft, as we know. And I feel like one of the challenges working with designers is like they're so optimized for the elegance and the beauty and the craft of the experience, and it almost can blind them to, is it actually usable? Is it actually delivering value? And so let me ask you, how do we think about working with design? How do we get them to focus on like the user need in a high craft way as opposed to worrying about craft in and of itself?
Yeah, so again, I love this example, love working with designers. So this is from my time at Discord, and this was recent, I think a little over a year ago. When Discord rebranded, design, this is, again, multiple layers of translation here. Design had to translate that rebrand into the desktop product, which meant picking a direction, not just applying a new color palette, right? And truly like from an interaction perspective, as well as from a visual and aesthetic perspective, it was to rethink how the desktop app was going to show up as part of this rebrand. And it was researchers' job not to pick the winner, which would have been saying, like, here, pick, option A. It was really to give the design team some deep insights about these different directions that they were exploring, so they could figure out what the right approach was going to be from a craft perspective that also met product and engineering's constraints. So, of course, they asked for a survey, and at Discord, we had an interesting relationship with our users. They're very, very engaged. We call them highly frequent users, or HFUs. and they're just like in our experiments. They kind of see every feature before it's about to come out. There's a YouTube influencer, his name's No Text to Speech, you can look him up, and he has a YouTube channel dedicated to just kind of leaking the stuff that we're working on. So
Ultimate power fan.
yeah, so anytime we do a survey, we have to be careful. We kind of have to assume, okay, this is going to get leaked. What's going to happen if it leaks? And so, we vetted these designs quite a bit before they went out. And it could have been a disaster when it leaked. And by the way, it leaked on X with a poll. So can you imagine? We had like a Twitter poll, and then we had our actual survey. But actually, it ended up being a gift. Because what happened when it leaked on X and also Reddit is that suddenly everyone was very engaged, both at the company as well as our users, in terms of which direction we were going to go with. And suddenly gave research a seat at the table, because then everyone wanted to know, what does this mean? Why is option A better than options B, C, and D? And that's when we could come out and say, well, it's not about picking a winner. It's about understanding what the feedback was behind this option. And so as a result, where the rubber really hit the road on these insights was our team sitting in design crit with designers and representing the voice of the customer in assessing different designs and approaches to the new interaction model we were testing. And so I think ultimately for design, it's about getting a seat at the table where it counts, where those decisions, kind of micro decisions, happen. And so that's why this one ended up landing really well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love framing that as like, this isn't a popularity contest. We're not trying to just optimize for the number of the options with the sheer number of most votes. It's about thinking about how do we take what our customers are looking for and asking for, but marrying it with what our design principles are and what we really want our product to look like. All right, so let's shift next to marketing. So third question for you guys. Raise your hand if you work closely with marketers at your company. A little bit less. So marketers are sometimes a real challenge for user researchers or even market researchers to work with, because they have these thoughts about what their how the brand should show up, and bring data into that conversation can be maybe a little bit more of a challenge than when you're talking to data science partners or design partners. And they also think in frameworks. But let me ask you, how do you engage with marketers to make them kind of see the user's voice as their North Star and make sure they're prioritizing what the users want the brand to show up as?
Yeah, so this one is tough, because if you know marketers, you know that they're really good at taking something extremely complex, and good marketers, right? And turning it into a story, something that you're going to remember, a tagline. Now, unfortunately, what happens when that translation happens to, in marketing speak, is you're losing a lot of the nuance. And a lot of the best insights that I've seen come from research teams, no surprise, have a lot of nuance. And so how do you find that balance when you're translating your findings to marketers, especially, so that you don't lose the core of the insight? How do you really just kind of strip it down to its essence is the challenge. And this is something that Discord really struggled with for quite a while. When I joined the company, they were kind of in between rebrands, let's say. And one of the challenges that the marketing team was having was really figuring out what type of message was going to land with the right audience, because the product itself was not complex, but it did a lot of things. It was very extensible. Our co-founders would talk about it in terms of Discord as a set of primitives. It can be many things to many people. And all marketing was heard was, oh, it can do chats, it can do like school clubs, it can do fan communities, it can do everything. So that's what we should talk about. No, that is not what we should have talked about, because it really confused anybody that wasn't a core user in terms of even understanding what Discord is all about and if it was for them. And so this is actually an example in mistranslation. When you have a set of insights that doesn't have like a good translation layer, it just kind of falls flat. And so, this is an example of where I think if we had worked a little bit more with multiple insights teams to come together with one cohesive message, that would have been a little bit more actionable to marketers, right? Marketers don't want to hear, these are all the things that Discord can do. They want to hear, Discord can do gaming really well. It's great for gaming communities, and these are the types of gamers we should go talk to. When without that clear framework, it became really, really hard to translate into external messaging and comms.
Yeah, I love that, like breaking it down into like distinct parts, so that it's not just like, okay, what is like this one really meaty conversation that can be really polarizing or divisive, but like breaking it down, like, okay, what are we really trying to optimize for, and making that kind of like taking that piece by piece to break it down, and then translating that really effectively to the marketers. Okay, let's talk about product and eng next. Last question for you guys. Raise your hand if you work closely with product and engineering on a day-to-day basis. So almost everybody in this room. So product and eng are great. They're great counterparts for research, great partners for us. But sometimes they get really focused on certain measures or metrics. And sometimes that's lined up with what the user's needs or how they think, and sometimes it's not. So I'll turn it to you, Apurva. Like, how do you work with product and eng when they're really focused on something that may or may not line up exactly with what the users will actually want?
So who here has worked with a PM or engineering team that's asked for a feature prioritization or a max dev survey? Yeah, okay. Unsurprising, right? Yeah. The reason that product and engineers often are asking for those types of surveys is because they're trying to make decisions at the margins, right? They're trying to understand, like, what is the bare minimum, an MVP, that a user will accept and be happy with. It's all about constraints. And so they don't necessarily want to hear what users want. Often that's what they'll tell you. What they actually want to hear is what are users going to tolerate for this release? And so, they'll ask for these types of surveys because they're trying to figure out what's that threshold. But it's not just quantitative research that can help them understand that. So in this case, this was work that I did for the Surface team, which was Microsoft's first party PC laptop to compete with MacBooks back when, most Windows PCs were really ugly and really heavy. And they were just trying to move that entire category of PCs to be more competitive with MacBooks while not losing their core user base, who were power users. They were knowledge workers. They cared a lot about speeds and feeds and things like battery life. But they also wanted a slimmer laptop. And so this was a huge headache for product and engineering. They were splitting hairs about, over should it be 12 hours of battery life or 15 hours of battery life? What do we put on the box? What can we actually commit to? By doing qualitative research and really honing in on what is it that users actually want, we discovered, hey, it's not a number per se. Of course, people are looking at numbers in terms of battery life, but what they actually want is they want to feel confident that they can go about their 8-hour workday and not have to plug in their laptop because they're moving from meeting to meeting and they don't want to be stressed about that. Can we promise them that? And engineering, would of course came back and said, yeah, let's test this out from a use case perspective. That's something we can do. And it ended up being a lot more productive as a result. And we got to a tagline from this too, which is all day battery life on the go. So kind of killed two birds with one stone. We met product and engineering's ask, and we gave marketing a really great tagline to go with as well.
That's an amazing story, and I love the way to think. I love thinking about the constraints to kind of guard against, while still having measures that the engineers in the room can kind of optimize for. All right, last but not least, let's talk about leadership. I think if our job as researchers is to have impact and influence at the company level, we have to work really closely with our execs. And that can be hard. I think if we say they're going to be the ones, to Rachel's point in the last talk, if they're going to ones who dive into our 30-page research deck and absorb every piece of methodology, that's just not true. It's just not going to happen. They're too busy. But I think most good leaders, again, do want to know what are users saying? What are they valuing? What are they needing from us? And how can we show it better for them? They're very user-focused at the leadership level if they're doing their job as well. But it's hard for them to do that, again, because they're so busy and they have so many other things that are competing for their attention. So let's talk, Apurva, about how you kind of connect researchers and insights with our leadership and with our execs, and how can you give them insights that then help them be more user-centric?
Yeah, so I tend to think of leadership's relationship with insights as an amplification of whatever the relationship is with product and engineering, at least in a tech company setting, or if you're working on a tech product. But the stakes are higher, because at the end of the day, someone's going to be on the hook and going to be accountable for decisions that are made and the product that goes out and the customer market feedback. And so that's kind of what's weighing on leadership's mind. And for them, what they're looking for is confidence. I mean, how many of you have presented research findings in a leadership setting and feel like, well, are they even looking at the numbers, right? They're not. They're kind of just like, what's the overall vibe here? Is this going to give me the confidence I need to make this decision? And so their language is in bets. And what they're looking to hear from you is some level of confidence about your results. They're definitely not looking for you to say, I think we should do more research. That immediately conveys the exact opposite, I think, of what they want to hear. So this is another example from my time at Discord. I mentioned that branding and positioning was a real challenge. And when I joined the company, it was kind of surprising to me because my perception was based on my own usage of the product, which was for a gaming use case. And when I joined the company, it turned out we didn't even have a team that was working on gaming use cases or like focused on gaming users. And as I kind of did the circuit and started talking to folks, what I realized was, I think that this company grew really quickly and the product grew really quickly, the usage grew really quickly, and we kind of lost touch with what's the core use case and how are users actually leveraging this product. So for them, they had lost confidence in who their users were, what they were building for, and how it all came together. And so then I made it my mission for the next 2 years that I was there to help increase leadership confidence in understanding their users and bringing it back, frankly, to the core use case, which was gaming. So I was really proud of Jason, our CEO, when he shared this post about a year ago announcing our rebrand and kind of going back to gaming, because he led the blog post with research from my team. And they were very simple insights. We have 200 million monthly active users, 90% of them are gamers, or they play games, and they're spending 1.5 billion hours playing thousands of unique titles across Discord each month. 3 very, very simple data points. I did not get them from surveys, although a lot of research, of course, went into building kind of the momentum that we needed internally to get us to this point. But it was really those 3 data points, I think, that kind of helped move the needle and get leadership to a point where they said, okay, we're ready to kind of come back to this as our positioning. We feel confident that there's a growth trajectory here. Here's why. And again, it's not a bunch of survey research here, although that was an input. It was just giving leadership that confidence by also projecting confidence as researchers, as insights leaders ourselves, that this was the right direction.
That's a huge accomplishment. So kudos to you and your team for getting that done at Discord. And I love this kind of ending of making sure the leadership understands there's confidence. It makes me think of an anecdote I heard a long time ago about Harry Truman was looking for a new head economic advisor, and they said, any tips, anything you want us to look for? And he said, I want an economist with one hand. And they said, why? What do you mean? He's like, I'm tired of hearing on one hand X and on the other hand Y. I want them to just have a claim and go with it. And I think the way you frame this would land well in general, but especially with President Truman. All right, with that, we'll probably have time for one question from the audience. Anybody out there have a question for Purva? Yeah, right here in the middle.
Hi. Oh, God. I'm Grace. I work at Capital One. I loved this conversation. My question is, what happens when these stakeholders start looking to you for all of the answers? I'm kind of in the best spot that a researcher could be because they're looking to me for strategic recommendations, but that also feels scary that I don't have all of the answers. So how can you make sure this is a conversation as you're doing the translation, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's even more relevant as roles around us and disciplines are kind of also doing musical chairs a little bit and starting to, designers are now PMs and PMs are now designers. So I definitely see this happening. I think my advice generally when it comes to this type of approach of translation is get to a point where you're turning the tables, right? You kind of want to answer the question with a question and try to get them talking to get to the why behind what they're asking. And that can help you triangulate, well, what's the most important thing that you're trying to prioritize here in terms of a decision or an outcome? And then that helps you kind of come back with one of these translation approaches. Usually there's 1 or 2 things that are a top priority. I don't know if you'd agree, Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd say that's a great problem to have. Like if your leadership team is coming to you for more and more questions, like that's a sign that you're providing really rich and important and influential insights, and that's exactly the kind of problem that you want to have. Oftentimes it's the opposite, where they're not coming to you enough because you have these insights that they're not even paying close enough attention to. So like if that's happening to you, first of all, like pat yourself on the back because you're doing your job really well. I think the other thing I would say is like, as much as you want to project confidence and instill a sense of trust in your insights, sometimes we don't have all the answers, to a purpose point. And like we have to, I think, be humble enough to know when we don't have the answers. And like, again, going back to that Harry Truman example, like you don't want to say like, well, we need to go do more research, but if you don't know the answer, don't have false confidence. I think be humble enough to say, we don't know everything, and like give me a second to go talk to some of my other insights functions and partners internally and go collect some data on this, or look what we have available off the shelf. But if you say something with confidence that's wrong, that's a huge trust erosion moment, and you want to avoid those as much as you can. Okay, I think we are over time, but this has been an awesome session and conversation at Apurva. So join me in thanking Apurva. This is awesome. All right, that is a wrap for our morning session, but I'm going to turn it over to a representative from one of our other great sponsors of Great Question.
Hi. Hey, thanks. Hi, everyone. Ooh, how we doing? My name is Ned. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Great Question. For the last 5 years, we've been building the all-in-one UX research platform loved by companies like Amazon, Intuit, Canva, Brex, you name it. Some of the most demanding product and research leaders on the planet. God love them.
They're done.
And what we've learned from them is that research is too slow. It takes weeks to go and get an answer on even a simple question. And research is also too siloed. It's stuck in repositories that no one really reads versus the places where people actually operate. None of this is compatible with this AI-first world that we're in right now. So we've rebuilt Great Question as the agentic UX research platform. Imagine asking Claude or Cursor, help me understand how accountants onboard into our product. And 30 seconds later, we've not only set up a study that follows all your guidelines, we've found the right audience from your panel or from external partners like user interviews, and our AI moderation agents can actually be running those sessions live for you. All this in minutes from the tools you already use and love. That's our write agent, our sourcing agent, our read agent that helps you understand what you already know before you go and run new research. And it's working. UX researchers and product builders at some of the world's most innovative companies are now running hundreds of studies every week through our MCP agents, thousands of sessions a week, and we just launched this 2 weeks ago. So if you are AI pilled, or you're an AI skeptic, or you're somewhere in between, I'd love to chat to you about what we're building and understand like where you are at on your research journey. Come and see us at the Great Question booth anytime. I'll be there all day, all week. Thank you.
As a quantity by trade, I love MagStiff. It's been the method behind some of the most impactful work of my whole career, but it's always had a gap. After the ranking, our AI moderator asks participants why something rose to the top, why something else didn't resonate, and everything in between, probing deeper to get to the real insight. MagStiff tells you what people prefer. Conveyor MagStiff tells you why.
Just ask a question in the Analyze tab, and Conveyor runs thematic analysis across every open-ended response. Click into any item, and you'll hear participants explain their choice in their own words.
We're a team of researchers building for researchers, and this is just the beginning. And that is why I joined the company.
Market research gives you the data, but does it always give you clarity? Meet Research HX, now with purpose-built market research agents. Streamline setup, reduce rework, and cut time to insight in half. Let agents analyze your reports in seconds. Sharpen your narrative and turn data into stories. Give stakeholders the insights they need when they need it. Meet the AI agents built for market researchers. Discover Research HX.
Listening to humans is at the core of research. We built Outset to help researchers listen to more humans than ever before, and at a speed that was never before possible. But listening is only half the job. The other half is seeing. And unfortunately, AI moderators can't see. Until now. We're launching visual intelligence. This brings entirely new capabilities to Outset's AI moderated interviews. This includes digital intelligence, physical intelligence, and emotional intelligence. And all of this enables deeper, more dynamic.
As a quantity by trade, I love MagsDiff. It's been the method behind some of the most impactful work of my whole career, but it's always had a gap. After the ranking, our AI moderator asks participants why something rose to the top, why something else didn't resonate, and everything in between, probing deeper to get to the real insight. MagsDiff tells you what people prefer. Conveyor MagsDiff tells you why.
Just ask a question in the Analyze tab, and Conveyor runs thematic analysis across every open-ended response. Click into any item, and you'll hear participants explain their choice in their own words.
We're a team of researchers building for researchers, and this is just the beginning. And that is why I joined the company.
Market research gives you the data, but does it always give you clarity? Meet Research HX, now with purpose-built market research agents. Streamline setup, reduce rework, and cut time to insight in half. Let agents analyze your reports in seconds. Sharpen your narrative and turn data into stories. Give stakeholders the insights they need when they need it. Meet the AI agents built for market researchers. Discover Research HX.
Listening to humans is at the core of research. We built Outset to help researchers listen to more humans than ever before, and at a speed that was never before possible. But listening is only half the job. The other half is seeing. And unfortunately, AI moderators can't see. Until now. We're launching visual intelligence. This brings entirely new capabilities to Outset's AI moderated interviews. This includes digital intelligence, physical intelligence, and emotional intelligence. And all of this enables deeper, more dynamic interviews and the most powerful AI analysis ever. Take these examples. With usability tests, our digital intelligence actually sees the user's behavior, whether you're testing designs or live products. It can understand their click paths, sense moments of confusion, identify points of friction, and finally close the gap between what people say and what they actually do.
You're spending a lot of time clicking on the voices of SF quotes. Why is that?
Want to see how people behave in the real world? Our physical intelligence means that AI can watch consumers interact with your product, follow them along as they shop, and observe the environment around them, so you can better design for the human experience. If you're testing ads, you want to understand how people react to each. Our emotional intelligence doesn't just listen to verbal cues. It can understand people's facial reactions and their tone, so you can identify which ads hit the mark and which fall flat. And Outset's AI moderator doesn't just make observations. It asks dynamic follow-ups based on those verbal cues to dig deeper, and then synthesizes all of that data to give you the insights you really need. By listening to what users say and observing what they do at the same time, you can more confidently understand how your customers think, react, and even behave. So you can build better products and make better business decisions, all with humans at the core. The next wave of AI moderation doesn't just listen, it sees. And now it's here.